The wind howled outside the window, but the restaurant was warm as spring and still, the cold sat in Yi Tangning's chest. She couldn't take Fu Hanbai's stare any longer, hot with resentment. She wanted to cry, but nothing came. The steak in her mouth might as well have been cardboard, tough to chew, impossible to swallow. This absurd blind date she should have refused from the start. Her mind raced, shutting out every sound except the pounding of her own heart. She scrambled for a way out. What now? First, clear things up with Mr. Huang. Then go soothe Fu Hanbai. She made the decision in a flash. She just had to hope Fu Hanbai could hold on until then, that he wouldn't storm over and play the jealous boyfriend before she could fix this. Her fingers curled against the table. She steadied herself and opened her mouth. Mr. Huang. Before she could finish, Huang Liangjing stood up and leaned across the table, both hands reaching toward her. A shadow fell over Yi Tangning. His hands were inches away. She squeezed her eyes shut, her lashes trembling with her eyes closed, her sense of smell sharpened. A pleasant cologne drifted around her, citrus over deep wood. The expected touch never came. She felt his hands hover near her head, then retreat slowly. She opened her eyes. Huang Liangjing was smiling at her. He opened his palm to show her a tiny winged insect, still twitching. You had a bug in your hair, Missy. I took the liberty. Oh no! Before relief could settle, a fresh wave of dread hit her. She glanced at Fu Hanbai. That they'd been that close. She was sure 100% he had misunderstood. She was right. Because across the room, Fu Hanbai had seen that moment and ground his teeth until his jaw ached. He tasted blood and didn't care. He swallowed it down, throat burning. The woman he loved was laughing and leaning close to another man, and he could do nothing. He had never felt so powerless. He'd never doubted that he and Yi Tangning would end up together. He'd believed she'd always be waiting for him, that no one else would ever come between them. Couldn't she give him more time? He could make more money than that man. He could give her a better life, shelter her from every storm. Why? Yi Tangning saw him tremble. He lifted a hand and covered his eyes. When he lowered it, his eyes were rimmed with red. He locked those eyes on her, full of resentment, anger, jealousy, and pained. Tears spilled without warning, tracking down his cheeks, hitting his carefully chosen shirt and suit jacket. They hit the floor, and they hit Yi Tangning's heart like stones. Her chest tightened. She opened her mouth. But Fu Hanbai had already stood up and walked out, long strides carrying him through the door. That fool. It was freezing outside, and he was barely dressed. Where did he think he was going? The seat beneath her felt like a torture device. She couldn't sit still another second. Her voice shook. Mr. Huang, I need to tell you something. Huang Liangjing looked up, waiting. He could tell Miss Yi had been distracted from the start. He'd never been treated so coldly on a date. It only made him more curious. First, I owe you an apology. Yi Tangning lifted her head and met his eyes, her expression serious. He raised an eyebrow, sat up straighter, and set down his utensils. Here it comes. The nice guy. Goodbye. You're an excellent man, and tonight's dinner was very thoughtful. But I only came because I didn't want to refuse my mother's wishes. I'm not looking for anything long-term right now. I'm truly sorry, Mr. Huang. There's an urgent matter at home. I need to leave immediately. She pulled on her coat, grabbed her bag, and stood quickly, nodding her apologies. Please send me the bill through your phone later. I'll cover half. Without waiting to see his expression, she turned and rushed for the door. She knew even the most polite man wouldn't look happy right now. He might even complain to her mother. She didn't care. Her footsteps faded as she disappeared from Huang Liangjing's view. He relaxed back in his chair and let out a low chuckle, as if he'd just heard something very amusing. That Miss Yi. Interesting. The moment Yi Tangning stepped outside, the cold bit her face, sharp and laced with snowflakes she hadn't noticed. When it started snowing, the first snow of winter in Haicheng, falling as if it had been waiting for this exact moment. Snowflakes drifted down from the sky, blanketing the ground in white, pure and spotless, like a blank canvas. But Yi Tangning had no time to admire the view. She looked around frantically, searching for Fu Hanbai. Her breath puffed out in white clouds that dissolved into the snowy air. Where had he gone? She stopped. She found him. He hadn't gone far. He was crouched under the eaves. Around the corner of the restaurant, his back to her. Snow had settled on his hair from the flakes blowing in. She let out a breath as she drew closer. She saw he was holding an umbrella. Her heart clenched, a slow ache spreading through her chest, like something fragile trying to break through the surface. That idiot. Her Abai. Even when he was furious, he hadn't left her. He'd known it would snow. He'd known she didn't have an umbrella, even though she'd lied to him, even though she might have walked out with someone else. He'd stubbornly stayed here, just in case she got caught in the snow. She walked toward him. Step by step she draped her coat over his shoulders and spoke, word by word. Abai. Let's go home. Pressed close against him, Yi Tangning could feel the searing heat of Fu Hanbai's body even through their clothes. He'd been standing in the snow for ages, but the fire inside him hadn't dimmed. She caught the hand that still gripped the umbrella and looked down at the top of his head. Weren't you supposed to walk me home? Fu Hanbai turned his face away, refusing to meet her eyes. They stood locked in that awkward pose at the corner of the restaurant, drawing stares from everyone who passed. Chu. The shift from hot to cold was too much. A sneeze slipped out before she could stop it. Finally, the man in her arms spoke, his voice thick. Why didn't you let him take you home? She saw her chance and pulled him upright. That's when she noticed the tears still clinging to his lashes, the red tip of his nose. She patted his head. Don't overthink it. It was just a meal. I'm not ditching you. You brought an umbrella, right? We're going home together. She softened her tone. Fu Hanbai yanked her into a tight hug. How far did things go with him? Still stuck on that. Yi Tangning sighed and rubbed his back in slow circles. You saw what happened. Why ask me? My mom pushed me into meeting him, and I already made things clear. Silence. Then, after a long beat, he forced out, then why were you standing so close? She let out a helpless laugh. There was a bug in my hair. He was just helping me get it out. Really? Really? Are we going to stand here talking all night? I'm freezing. She stomped her feet. Standing around in this outfit for so long, she was practically frozen solid. Fu Hanbai finally let go, not happily. He opened the umbrella. One hand held it over the two of them, the other gripped hers. They stepped into the snow together. Yi Tangning studied his face. His brow was still tight. She reached up and tapped the furrow between his eyebrows. Still mad? I'll make you that chiffon cake you love when we get home, okay? Fu Hanbai was not easy to soothe. He squeezed her hand harder and said, low and without meeting her eyes, not enough. Yi Tangning couldn't help laughing. The brat was cute even when he sulked. Then we'll go see that movie you've been nagging me about in a few days. Promise. Promise, she echoed, letting out a breath of relief. Then a mischievous impulse hit her. Why were you crying earlier? Fu Hanbai shifted his neck and muttered, You saw wrong. I wasn't crying. She laughed softly and let it go, but then something struck her as odd. She tugged his hand. How did you know I was eating here tonight? Fu Hanbai's eyes darted away. Now it was his turn to look guilty. Did you sneak a look at my phone? Her voice climbed, and here she'd frozen her butt off coaxing him. I didn't sneak. Your phone wasn't locked. The notification popped up. His voice shrank with each word. Even he knew it was a flimsy excuse. Oh, you little, Yi Tangning kicked him. I'm dealing with you when we get home. Fu Hanbai faked a pained yelp, but his eyes were smiling. The snow fell harder, each step a soft crunch on the ground. Fu Hanbai tilted the umbrella toward her side, letting his jacket soak on one shoulder. Their footprints stretched long behind them, swallowed by the wind and snow. Huang Liang stood at the restaurant entrance, staring after their retreating figures. He couldn't look away. He'd noticed the snowfall and rushed out to offer Yi Tangning a ride home. Instead, he'd witnessed that. A bitter laugh escaped him. He collapsed his umbrella, shook off the snow, and climbed into his car. She'd said she wasn't ready for a serious relationship, but she already had someone in her heart, and no one was taking that spot. Love really was a one-way road. It all came down to who got there first. Once they were home, Yi Tangning pulled Fu Hanbai close and brushed the snow off him. That's when she saw his entire right shoulder was drenched. He could make her furious and then melt her heart in the same breath. If he kept living here, she'd develop a split personality. She smacked his back without much affection. Go take a shower now. You think you can pull stunts like this just because you're young and healthy? Wait till you're old and your joints ache, then see what you do. Fu Hanbai peeled off his soaked shirt in one motion, revealing a lean, muscular torso. His chest rose and fell with each breath, melting snow tracing the ridges of his abs, pooling and sliding lower. Don't look. Yi Tangning froze, then spun around. Why did he have to strip so casually? Fu Hanbai wrapped his arms around her from behind, a low, husky laugh vibrating against her back. Heat rushed to her cheeks instantly. Isn't that what you're here for, to keep me in line? She felt the rumble of his voice, his scorching breath on her neck. She stepped forward, breaking free. Don't get smart with me. Who said I want to take care of you forever? Go shower. We're not done talking about your phone yet. She walked quickly to the kitchen, poured herself a glass of warm water, and downed it to steady herself. By the time Yi Tangning finished her own shower, it was late. She wrapped a towel around her hair and, in no rush to blow-dry it, went to the window. The first snowfall of the season in Haicheng outside. The snow was coming down heavier, turning everything white, but that didn't stop kids from being curious. She opened the window and looked down. A few children bundled up like little balls were building a snowman, throwing snowballs with gloved hands, anxious parents hovering behind them. Laughter and shouts filled the courtyard below. Watching them, she remembered winters with her own family, the three of them building snowmen together. Had they looked happy to outsiders back then, the way those kids looked to her now? The years had flown by. It had been over a decade since her father died. She couldn't deny it. she still craved the warmth of a home. Someone waiting at the door, sharing stories about their day, eating together, falling asleep together. Every time she came back to a cold, empty apartment, that ache only grew. A pair of large hands pulled her back to the present. Fu Hanbai shut the window and frowned at her wet hair. It's freezing out. What were you staring at? Stay there any longer and your hell turn to ice. Tangning looked at him and smoothed the crease between his brows. You're so young, why do you always frown? You'll get wrinkles. At that, Fu Hanbai immediately relaxed his expression, face perfectly blank. He was terrified of frowning now. He couldn't afford wrinkles. Tangning liked good-looking men. Seeing his blank face, she burst out laughing, but the smile faded fast. Was this fool the one she'd been waiting for? Her mind flashed back to how he'd come into her life, and a shadow crossed her face. Fu Hanbai didn't know what she was thinking. He took her hand and led her to the living room, pushing her down onto the sofa. You call me reckless with my health? Look at you. Tangning. He grabbed the hairdryer, plugged it in, and gently laid her head on his lap. Lie down. I'll dry it for you. She settled against his hard thighs, uncomfortable. She shifted around restlessly, and in the process, her movement brushed against something. His voice went rough. Don't move. She realized what she'd touched and went completely still, holding her breath. Fu Hanbai took a few deep breaths, forcing the desire down, and concentrated on drying her hair. His long fingers threaded through her soft waves, and something inside him melted. He picked up a strand, brought it to his nose, and inhaled. Not enough. He breathed deeper. So sweet. They used the same shampoo. Why did she smell so different? Addictive, maddening. His body was taut, his eyes darkened. Veins stood out on his forehead as he held himself back. His mind went to that restaurant, that man touching her hair. Unacceptable, mine. He whispered it. What? The hairdryer was too loud. Tangning only saw his lips move, nothing. He raised his voice and curved his lips into a smile. Something dark was threatening to break free. In the deep silence of the night, the snow kept falling soundlessly, witnessing everything. Fu Hanbai couldn't sleep. Finally, he gave in and went to stand outside Tangning's bedroom door. He pushed gently. It was ajar. It was the middle of the night, but the bedroom window still glowed white. Snow outside threw its reflected light across the small room, catching every detail of Fu Hanbai's obsessed expression. The pale glow settled on Tangning's face. He could see the fine, soft down on her skin, the delicate lines of her features. Against that light, her complexion looked almost translucent, clean and cool as the snow beyond the glass. Her ink-dark hair and full red lips were the only color in this intimate portrait, her mouth parted slightly with each breath, gentle, fragile. She could have been a sleeping princess from a fairy tale, waiting for the kiss that would wake her. But he wasn't some noble prince. He was a lowlife. A despicable man stealing a glimpse of beauty he had no right to touch. Thump, thump, thump. His heart slammed against his ribs, wild, barely contained. His Adam's apple bobbed in the heavy silence of that snowy night. The sound of him swallowing was impossibly loud. That sound was a warning. He ignored it. Breathing shallow, he crept toward the head of her bed. When he reached her, he reached out and gently smoothed a stray strand of hair from her forehead. The soft, silken feel of her skin under his fingertips made his chest ache. The beast inside him clawed at its cage, howling to break free, to take, to claim. Tangning belonged to him. Only him. Slowly, he bent down. The distance between them shrank to inches. He pressed his lips to her forehead. It was exactly as perfect as he'd imagined. The satisfaction lasted half a second. Then the beast screamed again. Not enough. Still not enough. His dry lips traced the arch of her brow, the warmth of her eyelids, the trembling sweep of her lashes, the delicate bridge of her nose. He kissed each place with reverence, working his way lower. Closer and closer, their noses brushed. He could feel her breath on his skin. Only a fraction of an inch separated their lips now. The smallest move would close that gap. Hanbai let out a rough breath. Finally. He kissed the soft, full mouth he'd been dreaming of. The fire caught. Once desire ignited, there was no putting it out. Flames roared through him, burning past reason, past control, threatening to scorch his very soul. He parted her lips with his own, and his tongue slid inside. The warmth he'd craved, the impossible sweetness, he tasted it at last. A tremor of pure satisfaction ran through him. Tangning. God, he wanted this. Bracing his hands on the mattress, he kissed her deeper, drank her in without restraint. The wet, shameless sounds of their mouths filled the quiet room. Hanbai closed his eyes. He was utterly lost, drowning in the bliss. He didn't see the girl beneath him start to frown. He didn't notice the tears gathering at the corners of her eyes. Too hot. Why was it so hot? Tangning felt like she was trapped inside a furnace. She ran, searching desperately for something cool, anything to ease the burning. She ran and ran. After what felt like forever, she found water. She scooped some up, tried to swallow, but it was scalding, burning her mouth, impossible to drink. Sweat soaked her skin, sticky and miserable. She turned and ran again, harder, faster, until the ground vanished beneath her feet. She was falling. Tangning's eyes flew open. Her mind surfaced slowly, still thick with sleep. There was a shadow above her. She blinked. Hanbai. His eyes were closed, his lashes fluttering. They were kissing. The feeling inside her mouth sharpened into focus. He still hadn't noticed she was awake, lost in his stolen kiss. He kept going, his tongue moving against hers, exploring, chasing, tangling. Her brain caught up all at once. In 23 years, she had never experienced anything this intense. She'd never even held a man's hand. A tiny, involuntary sound escaped her. That sound snapped her fully awake. What the hell were they doing? She bit down hard. Blood flooded both their mouths. Hanbai jerked back with a wince, finally surfacing from his haze. He opened his eyes, still breathing rough, still dazed, and met Tangning's icy glare. The color drained from his face. His mind went blank. He stammered, "Tangning, let me explain." She sat up, crossed her arms over her chest, and lifted her chin at him. Her stare was freezing. Go ahead. That look said I'd love to hear this. He had nothing. A thin strand of saliva still connected them, proof of exactly how far he'd gone. Mortified, he wiped it away with his hand. The evidence was right there. What could he possibly say? Even if he could talk his way out of anything, he couldn't rewrite what she just felt inside her own mouth. And he'd never been good with words anyway. He dropped his head. After a long silence, he managed, "I'm sorry." Then he stepped forward, grabbed her hand, and pressed it to his own cheek. His voice was still hoarse, still thick with wanting her. I wasn't in my right mind. I came in here in the middle of the night to kiss you. It's my fault. All of it. Hit me. As many times as you want. Take it out on me. He paused, then added, no, it'll hurt your hand. He straightened and started looking around the room. Tangning's frustration boiled over. She wasn't playing this stupid game. Did a few slaps fix anything? If bad people could make things right just by getting hit a couple times, the world wouldn't need cops. She pressed a hand to her burning forehead and let out a heavy breath. Her voice came out low. Get out. Fu Hanbai froze, staring at her. He didn't move. Her temper flared. She raised her voice. I said get out. Are your ears not working either? What? Your mouth won't behave and now your hearing's gone too? Something shifted in his expression, an emotion she couldn't read. He didn't say a word. He turned and walked out, pulling the door shut behind him with careful, quiet hands. Tangning stared at the closed door. Her head was pounding. She tried to get up, but the second her feet touched the floor, her legs buckled. She grabbed the mattress just in time to steady herself. How long had he been kissing her? She was furious and mortified. After a moment, when she felt solid enough, she walked to the door and locked it. The click was sharp in the silence. Outside, Fu Hanbai had been crouching beside the door. The sound of footsteps. He straightened. He wanted to apologize. Then the lock clicked. The light in his eyes died. Of course she didn't want to see him. He'd earned that. He slumped back against the door, sliding down until he sat on the floor, legs bent, head low, like a dog whose owner had shut him out. He'd give her time to calm down. Then he'd explain, properly this time. Inside the bedroom, Yi. Tangning pulled on her coat and lay back on the bed, staring out the window at the swirling snow. Her thoughts were a tangled mess. Her phone chimed softly. She picked it up. A message from Fu Hanbai. She didn't want to read it. Instead, she scrolled through her chat list and tapped on the conversation with today's blind date. Huang Liangjing. His last message had come in around 9. Even if there wasn't a romantic spark, he'd written, he admired her and hoped they could still be friends. Below that was a message from her mom, asking how the date went. Tangning had given her a vague answer at the time, but after she'd gone to sleep, her mom had sent a voice message, probably after hearing back from Huang Liangjing. Tangning tapped play. Her mother Hu Lingli's voice filled the room. Young Huang is such a good catch, handsome, well off. You'd have a hard time finding someone better if you looked with a lantern. And you still turned him down. What kind of man are you waiting for? Tell me, because I'm seriously worried here. You need to act fast before some other girl snatches him up. You're already 23 and you don't have anyone. How am I supposed to feel at ease? Tangning closed the phone, frustrated. Same words, same old tune. That if she had to choose, she'd pick Fu Hanbai over Huang Liangjing. Every time, she could admit it now, she had feelings for him. Otherwise, she never would have let him get this close. If any other man had held her like that or kissed her like that, she would have snapped. And that kiss just now, she touched her lips. Her body didn't lie. She didn't hate his touch. She just wasn't sure she could handle a long-term relationship with him. His past, his missing memories, she'd always avoided thinking about that. Deliberately ignored it. What if one day he remembered everything and decided she didn't matter anymore? Where would that leave her? Begging him not to leave. Her pride would never allow it. This was on her. She'd been unclear, weak. She'd given him hope she couldn't follow through on. If she couldn't commit, she shouldn't have let him believe she would. She was awful, completely awful. She pulled the covers over her head and wrapped her arms tight around herself. It was time to make things clear with Fu Hanbai. Last night's snow had covered everything in white, piling thick on the branches and blanketing the rooftops. Winter mornings came late. The sky was still dim, and few people were on the streets. A street sweeper in a red uniform pushed a wide broom across the pavement, the scratch of bristles echoing in the quiet. Some patches of road had iced over. Fu Hanbai walked carefully, one hand out for balance. In his other hand he carried the breakfast he'd gone across town to buy for Yi Tangning: steamed pork buns, dumplings, and millet porridge. She'd told him once she loved the buns from that shop, but after her mother got sick, she sold their old place and moved to a rental far from it. She hadn't had them in a long time. He looked down at the food in his hands, his expression heavy. He hoped the buns would lift her mood, at least enough to hear him out. Guilt and regret pressed on him, but his mind kept wandering back to last night. Her lips were so soft. He caught himself and pinched his arm hard. What the hell was he thinking? Not the time. He tucked the breakfast inside his coat to keep it warm. Cold food wouldn't help. Christmas was close. He noticed stores along the street had already put up trees, hung bells on their doors, and stuck on decorations. The holiday spirit was thick. He knew a lot of couples spent it together. He hoped he'd be with Yi Tangning by then. Should he confess on Christmas? He kept walking, lost in thought, when he spotted an old street sweeper hunched over, broom trembling. As he worked, the old man's next step hit a patch of ice. He started to fall. In a flash, Fu Hanbai rushed forward. Across the street, Fu Hanbai's assistant, Ling Qian, walked with her hands shoved in her pockets, stomping her feet against the cold. Damn weather. It was brutal. Her kid had thrown a fit this morning, refusing to go to school without the steamed buns from that shop. For all her degrees and high-level assistant role at Fu Corporation, parenting still had her beat. One meltdown and she was fresh out of ideas. After dropping the kid off, she needed to get to the office early to hand in the investigation materials on the CEO. It had been almost a month since their young boss, Fu Hanbai, vanished, and no matter how many search parties they sent, they came up empty. He'd disappeared like he'd evaporated. The corporate war leading up to it had been brutal, and no one expected. The security guard who'd been with Fu Hanbai for years to flip sides and join old Fu's younger brother, Fu Hua. According to the other guards on scene, the boss had taken several knife hits, but none to vital spots. Shouldn't have been life-threatening. But a heavy storm that day washed away all traces. If Fu Hanbai hadn't gotten help in that weather, the injuries could have killed him. Logically, if he were fine, he would have contacted them immediately. He wouldn't have stayed silent this long. They all feared the worst. Old Fu had just come out of the ICU, only to face losing his son. His hair had gone white, but he forced himself to handle company affairs. He slammed his hand on the table and gave a direct order: alive or dead, I want proof. Ling Qian stood at the crosswalk, waiting for the light. The intersection was busy, and the red light lasted a full minute. She scanned around out of boredom. Then her gaze froze. She spotted a man with the exact build of their CEO. She stared hard at his back. Even his walk seemed familiar. Could it really be CEO Fu? Her heart jumped into her throat that if it was him, she'd have made the biggest discovery, promotion and raise. Locked in, she didn't blink, watching. Then she saw the man rush forward and grab the old street sweeper who'd been about to fall. He helped him up, then grabbed the broom and swept the snow himself. Fast, powerful strokes cleared the patch in no time. He handed the broom back and walked away. The red scarf on that man was practically flapping in the wind. She must have been seeing things, definitely. Their CEO was famously cold and aloof. He practically walked with his chin in the air. He looked at everyone like a higher species staring down at amoebas, arrogant as hell. A Fu Hanbai like that would never, even if the sun rose in the west, do something that helpful, that downright wholesome. The light turned green. She shook off the thought and hurried away. Whatever happened, she just hoped their young boss was still alive. The man Ling Qian was thinking about had just gotten back to the apartment. He opened the door, took the breakfast to the kitchen, and poured the porridge into a bowl. He glanced at the time. It was getting late. He hesitated, wondering if he should call Yi Tangning to eat, but she probably didn't want to see him. As he debated, the bedroom door opened. Yi Tangning had been awake for a while. After last night, her nerves were stretched thin. Every creak and rustle from the apartment sent a jolt through her. The air between them turned awkward, silence so thick you could hear a pin drop. About last night, they both spoke at the same time, then stopped, surprised. You first. Again, identical words. Yi Tangning tightened her jaw. She didn't want to play this childish game coldly. She said, "Let's just pretend last night never happened." Fu Hanbai's eyes went wide with disbelief. She looked away, refusing to meet his gaze. Those eyes, they'd tricked her before, led her into this mess. This whole mess that had her shaken, that had her ashamed. He grabbed her sleeve, panic flooding his face. "Anning, listen to me. If he'd known it would end like this, he'd have broken his own leg before setting foot in her room." She shook him off, grabbed her coat from the sofa, and headed for the door without a backward glance. "I'm busy today. Don't look for me unless it's important. If you're hungry, buy your own food." Fu Hanbai stood there, helplessly twisting the fabric of his clothes. His voice came out hoarse. "At least, have breakfast before you go." Yi Tangning noticed the buns and porridge on the table. Her heart stirred, but she didn't slow down. She took her scarf from the hook and wrapped it around her neck. "You eat. I'm not hungry." Her hand was already on the doorknob. She paused and looked back. He lifted his head, hope flickering. Then her words sent his heart right back onto the fire. "You should go downstairs more. Especially by the trash can at the corner. That's where I found you." She turned away to put on her shoes, hiding her expression. "Maybe if you circle around there enough, you'll remember something. Get your memory back and go back to where you belong. Staying here with me every day, honestly, it's pretty annoying." The words hung in the air. She opened the door and left. The door clicked shut, and the apartment fell silent. Fu Hanbai sank onto the sofa, a bitter smile on his face. What right did he have to feel sorry for himself? He'd messed up. He'd made Anning angry. Whatever she said or did to him, he deserved it. The porridge and buns sat on the table, slowly growing cold and congealing. He sat there for a long, long time. Fu Hanbai sat on the sofa for a long time, long enough that the cushions molded to his body. When he finally stood, they didn't bounce back. He walked into the kitchen, ate every last steamed bun and dumpling, poured the cold millet porridge down the drain, and washed the dishes. Whatever happened, he needed the energy to earn money for Yi Tangning, and to figure out how to make her stop being angry at him. He pulled on his coat and wrapped the scarf she'd bought him around his neck without thinking. He lifted the fabric to his nose, closed his eyes, and inhaled. Maybe he was imagining it, but he swore the scarf still carried that addictive scent of hers. Fu Hanbai opened the door and headed downstairs. When he reached the corner of the apartment complex, he spotted the uneven row of trash cans and remembered what Yi Tangning had said that morning. Something pulled at him, and he walked over. Was this really where she'd found him? Honestly, his memories of that day were a blur. He'd been injured, caught in awful weather, soaked through, burning with fever, barely conscious. Standing here now, a strange, unnameable feeling rose in his chest. He moved to the bare patch of ground beside the cans and crouched down, hoping something would come back. But Fu Hanbai was all long limbs. Squatting in that cramped space did nothing but make his knees ache. Just then, an old woman on a tricycle rolled up. In the back sat a plastic bag stuffed with bottles and cardboard boxes. She stared at him with open suspicion. Good-looking guy, squatting by the trash. Was he trying to steal her spot? Fu Hanbai straightened to let her pass, but his legs had gone numb. He stumbled a few steps, head spinning, and braced a hand against the wall. The dizziness didn't fade. Fragments of memory flickered through his mind. Instead, a car speeding down a freeway. He was in the back seat. Men in black suits sat beside him, walkie-talkies gripped in their hands, eyes locked on the rearview mirror. The car swerved hard, weaving through traffic. What was that? A chase scene from some drama? Why would that be happening to him? His head throbbed. The pieces wouldn't connect. Then, they split up. He swapped clothes with one of the men in black. After that, he got into another car with two people. Suddenly, one of them pulled a knife and lunged, the other reacted fast, and all three of them fought. In the cramped back seat. He couldn't make sense of it. Weren't those supposed to be his people? Why would they turn on him? Fu Hanbai tried to reach for more, but nothing came. The sharp pain in his head slowly faded. A long moment passed before he snapped back to the present. The emotions hit him hard and fast. Frankly, Fu Hanbai was a little terrified of getting his memory back. If his real identity turned out to be some gangster or criminal, how could he stay by Yi Tangning's side with a clear conscience? He'd rather be a BAISA by. He could stay with her forever. Even if his memory never returned, he'd be fine with that. Once he accepted that, a weight lifted. He stopped wrestling with the question. He'd wasted enough time here. The old woman was long gone. He turned to leave. Meow. A faint sound came from behind the trash cans. Fu Hanbai glanced back, half convinced he'd imagined it. Then it came again, sharper in the quiet winter morning. He hesitated, then walked toward it. A kitten. Behind the cans, inside a small cardboard box, a kitten huddled. Its fur was matted and dull, sticking out in messy clumps. It was painfully thin, ribs visible with every shallow breath. Abandoned. Fu Hanbai studied it. Who would be cruel enough to leave it out in this cold? With temperatures like these, it wouldn't last long. The kitten noticed him and let out a string of tiny meows, almost like it was begging. Fu Hanbai reached out and gently touched it. You got abandoned too, huh? Same as me. Poor little thing. The kitten squinted its eyes and nuzzled into his palm, as if asking to be held. He wanted to take it in, but he was still living off Yi Tangning's charity. He'd need her permission. And after the mess he'd made this morning, he was barely keeping his own head above water. If he brought up adopting a cat now, he'd probably end up on the street himself. Wait, he could keep it at his studio. He'd almost forgotten. After making some money trading stocks, he'd rented a small office near Yi Tangning's place. He could keep the cat there. Fu Hanbai stroked the kitten's head, his voice soft. Want to come with me? The kitten gave a tiny meow, almost like a yes. He smiled and carefully lifted the whole box. Your mom's mad right now. You'll have to hang out at my place for a while. Once she calms down, we'll go home together. And you better behave. Lots of cute meows. Make her fall for you. Otherwise, if she gets mad again, we'll both be out on the street. Fu Hanbai took the kitten to a nearby pet hospital for a full checkup and deworming. Turns out the kitten was underweight, malnourished, and had a cold. He learned that cats could catch colds too. No surprise, the poor thing had been dumped by the trash cans, shivering in the wind for God knows how long. He paid upfront and left the kitten there for treatment. A pet hospital was way more reliable than a first-time cat owner like him. The receptionist behind the counter gave him a wide-eyed smile. That said, she'd noticed exactly how good-looking he was. Fu Hanbai's frown deepened. Even that didn't dim her interest. When he walked up, she put on her brightest smile. Can I get your contact info? In case anything comes up with the kitten, we'll reach out. His face stayed cold, but his brain worked fast. His voice was flat. It's my girlfriend's cat. I'll give you her number. Write this down. 150XXXXXXXX. She's usually busy, so don't bother her unless it's urgent. I already paid for 2 weeks. He gave her his own number. He had to keep it hidden from Yi Tangning for now. The receptionist's smile dimmed, disappointment flickering across her face. Then she shrugged it off. A guy that hot had to be taken. She probably wondered what kind of gorgeous woman had snagged a boyfriend like him. Fu Hanbai didn't linger. He turned and walked out. The studio he'd rented was sparsely furnished. No sofa in the living room, just a big table with 2 computers where he worked. It had a bathroom, kitchen, and balcony, but he never cooked. He rarely ordered takeout, either. When he was hungry, he just went downstairs to a restaurant. Fu Hanbai opened his computer to check the market. The stocks he just bought were all in the green, but he couldn't muster any interest. All he could think about was Yi Tangning's back as she walked away that morning, and her words, having you around all the time is honestly kind of annoying. He annoyed her. He'd thought she at least liked him. If he'd known she felt this way, he never would have done what he did last night. Fu Hanbai couldn't focus. He closed the stock market window and opened a search engine. He typed, angry. As soon as he hit angry, the search bar offered suggestions. Angry, how to win girlfriend back. He stared at the word girlfriend. Then, as if possessed, he clicked the first result. How to win your girlfriend back when she's mad. 3 ways to make her want you forever. 1. Have the right attitude. 2. Apologize first, no matter what. 3. Show her you care. Fu Hanbai had 0 experience with any of this, but the advice sounded solid. He needed to apologize sincerely. He pulled out his phone, opened Tangning's chat, and started typing. Then he deleted it, rewrote it. Deleted it again. It took him nearly an hour to settle on a message and hit send. After he pressed send, he leaned back and let out a huge breath. Then he fixed his sharp eyes on the screen, barely daring to blink, terrified of missing her reply. 1 second, 2.1 minute, 2. His eyes began to sting. Still nothing from Tangning. Right, she was probably busy at the cake shop. She might not have seen the message yet. He tried to reassure himself. Forcing his attention elsewhere, he opened his work software. Propping his chin on one hand, he idly moved the mouse with the other, scrolling through market news. Dashin Fund has cut its position in foreign auto exporters like Fongben. Daming Holdings stated on its interactive platform that its share offering is progressing, and major shareholder reductions have been disclosed. Ding. His phone chimed. Fu Hanbai snatched it up. Phone bill notification. He muttered a curse under his breath and paid $1,000, enough to cover a year, at least. He put the phone down, took a few long breaths, and forced his eyes back to the screen. Ding. Another chime. This time he glanced at it first, then reached for it slowly. It had to be Tangning. He opened it. A text from the pet hospital. Fu Hanbai slammed the phone down. He shouldn't have given them his real number. The scent of cake hung thick in the studio all day. Tangning had been distracted from the start. She burned her fingers on the cake molds so many times she lost count. She forced herself to focus. Don't think about Fu Hanbai. Don't replay the hurt in his eyes. Don't think about that kiss. That was the only way to get through it. Hours crawled by. By 5 in the afternoon, she was drained, body and mind. She collapsed into her chair and reached for her phone out of habit. A red notification stared back at her on WeChat. Of course. Fu Hanbai had messaged around noon, but she'd been elbow deep in batter, the mixer drowning out every alert. Tangning exhaled slowly. She still couldn't stop herself from tapping the message open. Just a look. She wasn't going to go soft. He'd sent a wall of text. She skimmed it. He was explaining his behavior yesterday, calling himself bewitched, heartless, worse than an animal, cursing himself for hundreds of words. He told her she could punish him any way she wanted. Tangning frowned and muttered under her breath, "You idiot." There were voice messages beneath the paragraphs. She tapped one, and his low, rough voice spilled out, "Ening, it's all my fault. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I lost my damn mind. What I did was unforgivable. Punish me however you want. Hit me, yell at me, just please don't shut me out, Aining. Don't push me away. You're all I have." By the last message, she could hear the tears breaking through. His words were raw, unguarded, too intense. He'd cracked himself open and laid the softest, most vulnerable part of himself at her feet, for her to do whatever she wanted with, for her to hurt. Outside the studio, traffic noise swelled and receded. Like something unreal, she had no room to waver. She was standing at the edge of a cliff, and one wrong step would send her into the abyss. She steadied herself, cleared her throat, and pressed the voice message button. She got out a few words, played them back, and deleted them immediately. Her tone was too fragile. She switched to text. Typing wouldn't betray her. Keeping it light by sheer force of will, she typed back, "Like I said yesterday, let's just pretend it didn't happen." We're all adults. We kissed. It's not a big deal. Don't make it one. I don't need apologies or some kind of payback. Let's go back to how things were before. She was lying through her teeth. Last night had been her first kiss. She'd spent her whole adulthood buried in schoolwork, and after her mother got sick, she'd run non-stop just to keep everything together. Then Fu Hanbai had come along with that steady, immovable force of his. He'd barged right into her life. Tangning closed her eyes, exhaustion swallowing her whole. She slumped back into the chair and let herself drift. She was so tired. Soul deep tired. Tangning was lying. Fu Hanbai stared at her back. As she brushed her teeth in front of the bathroom sink, wronged and bewildered. She'd said they'd go back to normal, but it had been almost a week, and they'd barely exchanged a handful of words. Every topic he brought up, she shut down with 2 syllables and mo. Her tone was cold enough to freeze someone solid. Tangning had never been like this with him before. He'd tried everything. Dressed up, wore his uniform, changed his hairstyle. She barely glanced at him. She wasn't even interested in his face anymore. Fu Hanbai felt like he was facing the biggest crisis of his life. Click. The door snapped shut. He shot upright, craning his neck to see. How had she left already? He hadn't even gotten a single sentence in. He sagged back onto the sofa, dejected, and yanked out his phone to search online again. He typed out his whole situation in excruciating detail. A response caught his eye on some forum. Your girlfriend is giving you the cold shoulder. Dude, dump her. Fu Hanbai blocked out the second half and latched onto those first 3 words. Cold-shouldered, so that was what this was. He thought back to that day at the studio. He'd waited until nearly dark for her reply, and when it finally came, it hit him like a club. We're all adults. We kissed. It's not a big deal. Don't make it one. Was he overreacting? But kissing wasn't some casual thing you just did with anyone. He liked Tangning so damn much it took everything in him to hold back. And that was exactly why he'd stolen that kiss. Had Tangning kissed a lot of people before? The jealousy scraped at him, raw and ugly. He wanted to ask her. He typed out half a question, then erased every word. What right did he have to ask? He was nothing to her. Fu Hanbai let out a bitter laugh. He was just a man temporarily crashing in her apartment. A thump came from upstairs. The kid up there was at it again. The noise pulled him back to the present. He turned his head and stared at the rising sun outside the window. Half his face caught the light, half lay in shadow. His jaw could have been carved from marble. The sun tingled on his skin. What the hell was he supposed to do now? The tension between them dragged on, but time didn't stop for anyone. Days slid by in a fog. That afternoon, at 4 o'clock, Fu Hanbai stepped out of his studio and stopped on the sidewalk. Today was Christmas. Even before dark, the street lamps, trees, and buildings on both sides were already drowning in a sea of Christmas lights. Colored strings and sparkling bulbs draped every branch, washing the whole street in color. Storefronts were decked with bells, snowflakes, and tiny wrapped gifts, all surrounded by loops of twinkling lights. Vendors were setting up shop along the curb, hawking jewelry, snacks, toys. They wanted to cash in on the crowd that would swarm the streets by night. People streamed past him, their laughter and chatter rolling together into one warm wave of noise. Fu Hanbai watched couple after couple drift by. all tangled up in each other. A sharp ache of envy twisted in his chest. He wanted to spend Christmas with Yi Tangning. He pulled out his phone and opened her chat. The nickname at the top of the screen cut into him. Wife. He typed, Ning, will you be home early tonight? To his shock, the reply came almost instantly, one syllable. But it made his heart kick against his ribs. It was Christmas. Should he do something to make this right? He tapped her profile picture and studied it. A kitten. She must like cats. The animal hospital had messaged him. The stray he'd found that night had recovered. He'd been meaning to pick it up anyway. Maybe he could take a risk. Maybe this kitten could melt the wall she'd put up between them. He didn't second guess himself. He turned and strode toward the animal hospital. When he got there, a staff member led him to the cat he'd brought in. It had changed so much he barely recognized it. After days of careful treatment, it wasn't listless anymore. Its coat was sleek and glossy now, with all the grime washed off. Its true colors showed. A pure white cat with only the faintest pink on its ears and nose. The moment it saw Fu Hanbai, its blue eyes locked on him. It let out a soft meow, like it recognized its rescuer. He reached out and stroked gently under its chin. Didn't know you were this pretty. When you meet your mom, you'd better be on your best behavior. If she lets you stay, you'll get all the fish treats in the world. The kitten didn't understand a word. It just squeezed its eyes shut and purred. Fu Hanbai bought a carrier from the shop, lined it with a soft blanket, and settled the kitten inside. He grabbed 2 bags of cat food, just in case. Ignoring the receptionist's longing stare, he walked out with the cat tucked under his arm, his confidence surprisingly high. As he passed the open-air market, he paused. Ahead of him, an elderly couple was haggling ferociously over 50 cents. Something sparked in his mind. A cat alone might not be enough. He needed a backup plan. Fu Hanbai got home at 5:30 in the afternoon. He'd been loaded down with shopping bags when the snow started coming down. Christmas Day. Everyone around him lit up, pulling out their phones to snap photos of the falling flakes. But Fu Hanbai's mind was on Yi Tangning. The second he stepped inside, he texted her. It's snowing outside. Do you have an umbrella? Want me to come get you? Then it hit him. He still didn't know where her studio was. He'd ask for the address as soon as she replied, meow the cat in. The carrier let out a soft, uncertain cry. He carried it to the study, the room where he worked from home. Yi Tangning rarely went in there. He unlatched the carrier. The cat was cautious, poking its head out but staying low inside the box. Its eyes darted around, taking stock of the unfamiliar space. Fu Hanbai grabbed an old newspaper, tore open a bag of cat food, and poured some onto the paper. He ran a hand over the cat's head. Be good. Don't go wandering. Eat whenever you're hungry. I'm going to set up a surprise for your mom. The cat nudged his hand and let out another tiny meow, almost like it understood. Still uneasy, he shut the study door. No roaming, not tonight. Then he washed his hands in the kitchen and got to work on Yi Tangning. Surprised, he'd passed the market on his way home and thought about just cooking her dinner. But it was Christmas. Make it romantic. So he'd brought the cat carrier to the supermarket next door and bought steaks, candles, and red wine. Candlelight dinner. He knew his skill level. He bought extra of everything. If he ruined the first batch, he'd try again. Steak couldn't be that hard, right? He'd figure it out. He pulled up a tutorial on his phone, watched it 3 times, and decided it looked simple that he pocketed the phone and got moving first. He grabbed Yi Tangning's bunny apron from the cupboard and tied it on. Too small for his 6'1" frame. The hem barely hit his thighs. He looked ridiculous. He didn't care. He followed the steps exactly. Took the steak out of the package, rinsed off the blood in a bowl, patted it dry with paper towels, salt and black pepper on both sides, pressed in lightly seasoned. Next step in the video, sear the steak. See? Cooking wasn't so hard. He was feeling pretty good about himself. Where was the frying pan? Probably in the lower cabinet. He crouched down, pulled out the pan, and stood up fast. He didn't see the upper cabinet door bang. His skull connected hard. He let out a low grunt, brows knotting, and sank back down, waiting for the pain to fade. Once he could breathe again, he stood bang. Same exact spot. He pressed his fingers to his head. A lump was already forming. Fu Hanbai closed his eyes and let out a slow breath. When Yi Tangning got home, he was definitely playing the sympathy card. Finally, he got the pan on the stove, turned up the heat, and let it warm. He added olive oil, also newly purchased, and waited. Then he laid the steak in the pan, gentle. The meat hit the hot oil with a satisfying sizzle. Soon the rich scent of beef filled the kitchen. Fu Hanbai raised an eyebrow, a thin smile curling at the corner of his mouth. He went to flip the steak. The underside was black. Charred, the smile vanished. His face darkened to match the steak. All right, fine. He pinched the bridge of his nose and exhaled. This was why he'd bought extra. At least 2 of these had to turn out. After a lot of trial and error, Fu Hanbai finally produced 2 steaks he considered acceptable. He slid them into the warmer to hold. Then he looked at the kitchen, total disaster zone, and the pile of failed attempts on the counter. He pulled on gloves and started scrubbing. Had to erase the evidence before Yi Tangning walked in. Outside the window, cheerful Christmas songs drifted through the cold air. Fu Hanbai hummed along as he washed dishes, already imagining the candlelit dinner. By the time he finished cleaning, set the table, and poured the wine, it was late. He checked his phone. Almost 8. Why wasn't she back yet? He frowned and opened their chat. She hadn't replied since the afternoon. His last message, the one asking for her studio address, still sat there unanswered. A cold knot tightened in his chest. He called. Her. A robotic female voice answered. The number you have dialed is powered off. Fu Hanbai couldn't stay still another second. He looked out the window. Snow was coming down hard. Something happened to her. He didn't let himself finish the thought. He grabbed his phone, yanked on his coat, snatched his keys, and left. The door slammed shut behind him. The apartment went silent. On the table, the candle flames flickered. Alone in the study, the cat, oblivious to all of it, slept soundly in its warm bed. Tangning got home just before 10. Earlier that afternoon at the studio, Fu Hanbai's message had come in just as she was finishing her last orders. She texted back saying she'd be home early. But the streets were chaos because of Christmas. Then the snow started on her ride back, making the road slick. She was on her electric bike, jaw tight, pushing through, when she collided with a bicycle at an intersection. Strictly speaking, it wasn't her fault, but when she saw who was on the other bike, a teenage girl in a school uniform, she insisted on taking her to the hospital for a checkup. That ate up hours. The hospital. She wanted to call Fu Hanbai and explain, But her phone was gone. It must have flown out of her bag during the crash. After everything was settled, she went back to the intersection and searched. Nothing. With the crowds and the holiday traffic, someone had definitely picked it up. She gave up and rushed home. He had to be losing his mind. She'd been unreachable for way too long. Tangning opened the door quietly, brushed the snow off her coat, and set her bag, scarf, and gloves on the entry table. After riding through the cold for so long, her whole body felt wooden. She'd expected Hanbai to bombard her the second she walked in, but the apartment was still dark. Is already asleep. She slipped into her slippers and tiptoed toward the living room. That's when she caught the faint glow from the kitchen area. Frowning, she made her way over. Hanbai was slumped across the dining table. His face was flushed, his brows creased even in sleep. He looked miserable. 2 candles on the table had burned halfway down. Melted wax had dripped onto the wood and hardened. That was the source of the light she'd seen. Next to the candles, the steak sat cold. 2 wine glasses and several empty bottles lay scattered across the table. Tangning picked one up and tilted it. Bone dry. The air was thick with alcohol. Judging by how out of it he was, he'd drunk a lot. Then it clicked. He'd asked if she could come home early because he'd planned a candlelit dinner. A surprise. And she'd shown up hours late. A sharp ache twisted in her chest, like a bite she couldn't shake. She didn't know what to do. She picked up a knife and fork, cut a small piece of the steak, and forced herself to chew. Cold as it was, it tasted decent. He must have put real effort into making these. Her eyes shifted to Hanbai. From this angle, she could see the soft whirl of his hair and the swollen red bump rising on his head. She reached out and stroked his hair. Gentle Abai? No response. The strong smell of alcohol hit her again. She sighed. What was she going to do with him? He couldn't sleep here. It was too cold. He'd get sick. She grabbed him and struggled to pull him upright, letting him slump against her. Moving him was brutal. He weighed a ton, crushing her. As she shifted, his head dropped against her neck. His breath was scorching, like a furnace against her skin. Every exhale made her shiver. She couldn't take it. She freed one hand and pushed his head to the other side. That's when his eyes snapped open. He grabbed her wrist. His gaze took a second to focus. His voice came out rough, uncertain. Tangning? It's me. Relief flooded through her. He seemed alert. She let out a breath. How much did you drink? You're wasted. He didn't answer. He just kept saying her name, voice low and hoarse, his grip on her hand tightening. Tangning, Tangning, I'm here. Seeing he wasn't going to stop, she answered, helpless, I'm right here. Tangning, why did you take so long? He pulled her into his arms with a fierce, desperate strength, like he wanted to fuse her into his bones. Let me explain. She didn't get angry. She patted his back, soothing, ready to tell him everything. The next second, she regretted it. Never argue with a drunk man. He opened his mouth and bit her ear. Then he started licking, sucking. Her ear ignited. She felt his tongue sliding along the edge, the wet heat making her whole body flush. She couldn't stop the soft moan that escaped her. The sound spurred him on. He found the tender lobe of her ear, treating it like something to play with, teasing and pulling it between his teeth. Then he clamped down gently and ground. Panic ripped through her. If he tried to take this further, she wouldn't be able to stop him. Not like this. She pounded on his chest, her voice shaking. Abai, you're drunk. Let go, stop it. The moment Fu Hanbai's mouth found that sensitive spot, Yi Tangning's whole body jolted. She tightened her grip on him, her voice sharp with warning. Do that again and I'll be mad. The man froze mid-bite, then slowly released her and stumbled back a few steps. The word mad seemed to cut through the fog. He couldn't make her mad again. He stared at her, lost, like he was just now recognizing who she was. Like he had no idea what he'd been doing. Yi Tangning touched her burning ear. It was slick. She jerked her hand away as if the wetness had scalded her. She glared at the unsteady culprit swaying in front of her and forced herself to breathe. Stay calm. She'd survived far worse than this. This was nothing. Arguing with a drunk was pointless. And if she was honest, tonight was partially her own fault. She took Fu Hanbai's arm and tried to steer him toward the couch, her voice dropping low, gentle, the way you'd coax a restless child. Hanbai, you're drunk. Go to sleep. I'll explain everything tomorrow. But he wouldn't budge. She pulled, and he stood there like a statue. Her patience snapped. She spoke through gritted teeth. What do you want? It's late. Go to bed. He reached for her again, hands going for a hug. This time she was ready. She knocked his hand away, but she used too much force. He lost his balance and hit the floor hard. The man was relentless tonight. Yi Tangning's patience was nearly gone. She really considered leaving the drunk idiot right there. But then she looked down at his face, lost and helpless, and she couldn't make herself walk away. She let out a tired sigh. She crouched in front of him slowly, touched his head, and asked softly, "What's wrong? Does it hurt?" Fu Hanbai just stared at her, ignoring the question. "Aining, where did you go? I couldn't find you anywhere." Before she could answer, he kept talking. "You didn't answer your phone. I couldn't find your studio. I didn't know where you were. I kept looking, but I couldn't find you. Are you going to leave me? Because I did something wrong." He didn't blink. She couldn't tell if he was drunk or half awake. Seeing his red-rimmed eyes and that lost look, her heart gave way. She pulled him into a slow embrace and whispered, "I'm not leaving you. I just got delayed. See? I'm back now. Aining, I'm here. Aining, I'm here." He kept saying her name, and she answered every time. "I like you." Before she could get the words out, his big hand pressed against the back of her head and he dipped down, kissing her hard. She tried to speak, but he took the chance to slip his tongue inside. The words melted into the kiss, dissolving into broken little whimpers. Annoyed, she shoved at him, but he caught her hand. She gave up. Was he really drunk? How could he predict her moves so perfectly? But soon she couldn't focus on that. He kissed her with fierce intensity, like a punishment for her distraction. Their tongues tangled, the wet sounds loud in the quiet night. At some point, her hand slid from his chest to wrap around his neck. Fabric rustled as their bodies pressed closer, sharing heat and the frantic rhythm of their hearts. Then, neither knew who pulled back first. A thin, glistening thread stretched between their lips before it broke. They were both breathing hard, neither spoke. "I know you like me," Yi Tangning said first, her voice still trembling a little. She cupped his face in both hands, her gaze tracing the sharp brows, the high bridge of his nose, those lips that were pure trouble. She leaned in close, her breath hitting his skin. Inches away she spoke slowly, each word deliberate. "I like you too. Then she kissed him. Liking someone was simple. You couldn't hide it. Why had she been torturing them both with her own cowardice? Whatever came next, Tangning knew one thing with absolute clarity: that in this moment, she wanted to kiss him. That was enough. Fu Hanbai finally reacted, or maybe it was pure instinct. His hand found her waist and squeezed. They kissed again, even harder than before. Outside, snow fell on a silent Christmas night, and they kissed the person they loved most. The music from the street faded. The world went still, nothing but the snow drifting down. In the study, the little cat purred in its sleep, blissfully unaware of what its owners were doing just outside the door. This Christmas was almost over. Lost in the kiss, Tangning felt his mouth soften, the aggression fading. Fu Hanbai's tongue brushed her lips once, twice. She frowned, confused. Her eyes, still hazy with desire, blinked open. Her body had gone soft, but she wanted more. She opened her eyes to find Fu Hanbai with his eyes squeezed shut, his head slowly tipping to the side. "Bye," she whispered. No answer. His head lolled, his lips still murmuring her name under his breath. He was asleep. Tangning let out a long, resigned sigh. She picked this idiot herself. What else could she do? Tough it out. With an enormous effort, she hauled him, built like an ox, onto the sofa and threw a blanket over him. She stood there, staring at his slightly parted lips. Both of her kisses had been with Fu Hanbai. And honestly, it was addictive. This guy had way too much practice, she muttered under her breath, wondering how many girls he'd ruined before her. Shaking it off, she headed back to her room, rubbing her aching back. This Christmas had been way too eventful. If Fu Hanbai could have heard her grumbling, he would have jumped up and screamed his innocence. He wasn't some player. Couldn't a guy just be naturally talented? Too bad he was dead asleep, sprawled out on the sofa, lost in some dream. His brow was no longer furrowed, his eyelids fluttered, and the corner of his mouth curled up. The long day was over. The next morning, when Fu Hanbai finally surfaced from sleep, his eyelids felt like lead. He forced them open. Familiar ceiling. Sunlight was already blazing through the window, so bright he threw a hand over his eyes. His feeling crept back. He realized his head was pounding, threatening to split open. He struggled to sit up, gripping his head, and stayed on the sofa for a long moment before his senses caught up. Why did his head hurt so much? He tried to remember. He'd had a lot to drink. Why had he been drinking? He rubbed his neck, wincing as he pieced it together. Unning. He jolted, nearly falling off the sofa, as the memories of yesterday flooded back. He'd made her a candlelit dinner at home. She hadn't come back. He'd rushed out to find her, searched forever. Came home depressed. Drank. Then she'd come back. He'd confessed. And then, she'd said yes. Fu Hanbai froze. His face went blank. He couldn't speak for a second. It felt like he stopped breathing. Even he couldn't believe Tangning liked him too. He pinched himself hard, using the pain to confirm he wasn't dreaming, then sucked in a huge breath. She'd told him she liked him back, and they had kissed. More than once. That thought, he touched his lips, savoring the dizzying memory. The details from the drunk haze were fuzzy, but he remembered her mouth being soft and sweet, like a piece of candy he couldn't get enough of. He yanked the blanket over his head and smiled like an idiot underneath it. Tangning heard his goofy laughter from across the house. This idiot, when he'd laughed himself out, Fu. Hanbai threw off the blanket and went looking for Yi Tangning. He had to make sure with his own eyes that this wasn't a dream, or he'd never feel at ease. He searched the whole house, finally finding her in the study. The moment he saw her, his eyes lit up. He couldn't get to her fast enough. Nin. His voice was bursting with excitement. Right now, no woman in the world, not even a goddess, could compare to Yi Tangning. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, pulling her tight, and nuzzled his head against her shoulder. Ning, did we really? She turned, and he saw she was bottle feeding the kitten he'd rescued. Yi Tangning held the tiny cat gently in her hands, feeding her milk. As she did, she stroked the kitten's head with a soft rhythm. The kitten nestled in her hands, front paws gripping the nipple, little mouth open, sucking in small sips, its ears tilted back slightly, eyes squeezed into slits, expression full of pure contentment. Yi Tangning pushed away the head that kept nuzzling into her neck, sounding annoyed. Hanbai is drinking her milk. Fu Hanbai blinked. She'd already named it, and the cat was getting better treatment than he was. Its dad still didn't have a full name. Yi Tangning glanced down at the kitten. Is this the cat you picked up? Why did you lock the door? She was scratching at it all morning, hungry. Fu Hanbai, who had completely forgotten about the kitten, coughed guiltily. I found her by the trash can downstairs. I'm glad you like her. You actually did something good for once. Yi Tangning was focused on feeding the cat, not looking at him. He wasn't giving up. He leaned back in, pressing soft kisses to her neck one after another, desperate for her attention. We're together now, right? Her shoulders twitched at the ticklish sensation. She looked at his endearing face and decided to tease him. Her tone turned serious. Together, you're still dreaming? Fu Hanbai froze, the smile vanished from his face, his whole body went rigid, like he'd been struck by lightning. It was a dream after all. Of course she couldn't like him. His arms slowly loosened around her. He looked lost, his voice a hollow whisper. Sorry. Yi Tangning realized she'd taken the joke too far. She quickly reached up and pressed his hand back against her waist, then leaned in and brushed a kiss across his Adam's apple. Idiot. You actually believed that? I never lie about the things I say. Today is day one. Don't think you can back out. His throat bobbed, his voice came out rough. Ning, you really are to die for. His heart felt like it had restarted, blood rushed from his chest to every limb. One word from Yi Tangning could decide his life or death. His large hand gripped her slender waist, spinning her around to face him, and he lowered his head again. Let me kiss you, just one. The space between them shrank until he could feel her breath. They were practically breathing the same air. Just as Fu Hanbai was about to capture the red lips that had haunted his every waking thought, she suddenly reached up and covered his mouth, disgust in her eyes. You drank so much. You smell like alcohol. Go brush your teeth first. Fu Hanbai just stared at her. He hadn't brushed last night after drinking either, and she hadn't complained then. Yi Tangning frowned, pressing her palm against his forehead. Then she touched her own for comparison. You're running a fever and you didn't know. Your forehead's hot enough to fry an egg. Fu Hanbai finally noticed that his head was fuzzy. He did feel a bit sick, but the shock of Yi Tangning being with him had been so overwhelming that everything else had been blocked out. Yi Tangning gently set Hanbai back in her bed and pulled him toward the sofa. Lie down for a while. There's medicine in the house. I'll get you some. Fu Hanbai wasn't letting go. He held her hand, not budging. He thought he could push his luck. He stole a few glances at her. What if I go brush first? Yi Tangning had had enough. She twisted his ear. Not now, you idiot. Fu Hanbai spent the day at home getting over his fever, and by the next morning, he was basically back to his normal, energetic self. Yi Tangning had to admit that youth had its perks. Not that she was ancient, but still, the thought made her worry about her own future. Her lower back couldn't take much more of this. She'd have to keep Fu Hanbai busy somehow so he wouldn't have the energy to wear her out. The next day, she had to go to her studio, so she woke up early. She was already dressed and about to head into the bathroom to wash up when the front door swung open. She glanced over. Fu Hanbai stood there, back from wherever, holding breakfast. He was up earlier than her. When he saw her, a smile broke across his face before he could stop it. You're awake. I got your favorite soup dumplings. He held up the takeout bag like he was showing off a trophy. Truth was, he'd been up since 5. Too excited to sleep. Now that they were really together. He'd paced outside her bedroom door for a while but didn't dare go in, so he went downstairs for a run, and when it felt like the right time, he bought her breakfast. Standard boyfriend behavior, obviously. Yi Tangning had been craving those soup dumplings, but the shop was way too far, and she always found it too much of a hassle, so she hadn't had them in ages. She stood on her toes and patted his head. Thanks, boyfriend. The man in front of her bent down suddenly, his eyes fixed on hers, focused and burning. Then he tapped his lips. I already brushed today. She smiled faintly and covered his mouth as it moved closer. But I haven't yet. Fu Hanbai. He took the breakfast to the kitchen, then followed her into the bathroom and stood there watching her wash up with a look of pure grievance. She had just finished washing her face and was reaching for moisturizer when he couldn't take it anymore. He grabbed her and kissed her, mint-flavored. Yi Tangning made a mental note. Next time, she'd say she needed to finish her skincare routine first. Otherwise, by the time they were done, her face would be dry and flaking. After breakfast, she got ready to head to the studio. She pulled on her coat, and Fu Hanbai followed her, wrapping her scarf around her neck like the perfect, dutiful boyfriend. Once it was on, he bent down, lowered his head, and closed his eyes. Yi Tangning couldn't help but laugh. She planted a peck on his forehead as a reward for his good behavior this morning. She turned to open the door, but he pushed her gently against it, one hand cushioning her head, and kissed her again. This time it wasn't a quick peck. His tongue swept in, claiming every bit of sweetness he could find. His hand settled on her waist. Her fingers dug into the muscles of his back as his breathing quickened. Heavy footsteps and kids' voices echoed from upstairs, covering the soft sounds between them. They both snapped back to reality, staring at each other's flushed faces. His hand stayed on her waist, unwilling to let go. She took a breath, grabbed her bag, glanced at the time, and pushed him away. Stop. I really have to go. She opened the door and glanced back at him. He stood there with that same reluctant look. If you're free, come help me out. That way you'll know where the studio is. If you ever can't find me, you'll have somewhere to go. No more drinking alone. She was a little embarrassed, so she said it fast and started walking. Fu Hanbai grabbed his coat and hurried after her. Wait for me. His voice practically vibrated with joy. On the freezing street, a little electric scooter caught everyone's attention. It wasn't the scooter itself. It was the pair riding it. The woman in front was stunning, with delicate features, a red knit scarf making her skin look luminous. But her expression right now was less than pleased. The man behind her was tall, with sharp, handsome features that looked almost unreal. But there he was, scrunched up on the tiny scooter seat, arms wrapped tight around her waist. A giddy smile plastered across his face that clashed completely with his cool looks. Tangning's eye twitched. She couldn't take this show off anymore. She patted the hand clamped around her waist. Loosen up. There's a handlebar up front. Use that. Hanbai pouted and pressed his cheek against her back. He loosened his grip slightly but didn't let go. Her voice came back on the wind. Don't you have to work at the bubble tea shop? He froze. He'd almost forgotten that in her eyes, he still worked at a bubble tea shop. He quickly pulled his hands back and sat up straight. I asked for the day off. She didn't think twice. Your boss is pretty nice. He rubbed his forehead. He'd have to pick a day to come clean. But not now. They'd just gotten together. He couldn't ruin things with something like this. He'd wait until the relationship was more stable. When they reached the studio, Hanbai looked around. So this was where she worked. The place wasn't big, but it was cozy. Yellow gingham tablecloth, dried flower arrangements. The kitchen was fully stocked with all kinds of baking equipment. She'd saved up 4 ingredients and packaging boxes covered every available surface. She didn't expect him to actually help. She pointed to the sofa and told him to sit. Then she dug a jigsaw puzzle out of a cabinet, a prize from a supermarket loyalty drawer, and handed it to him to pass the time. Hanbai stared at the puzzle on the table. A little insulted. He was useful too, okay? The first time he tried cooking, he actually got some results. Even if he'd failed a lot. He volunteered to help, and she gave him something simple. The eggs are over there. Take 6 and separate the yolks from the whites. Put them in different bowls. She even demonstrated for him. I've got it. Don't worry about me. Go do your thing. He waved her off with total confidence. We'll see, she thought. He washed his hands, meticulously cleaning between each finger, dried them on a towel, then slowly unbuttoned his shirt cuffs and rolled them up, revealing his toned forearms. He picked up an egg with steady hands, jaw tight with concentration. The whole MasterChef vibe almost fooled her. Had she underestimated him? He tapped the egg lightly against the bowl. Nothing. He tapped harder. Still nothing. Tough shell, he muttered to save face. Third time, he went full force. Crack. The egg shattered. Yolk, white, and shell fragments sprayed all over the table, along with his hand. Sticky. Hanbai. He carefully lifted the bowl with his other hand, a few drops of egg white inside, and looked at her with an innocent expression. Can you use these egg whites? She stared at him, questioning her life choices. Why had she ever thought otherwise? Hanbai was still Hanbai. Not a single change. She realized the biggest help he could offer was to not be here at all. She pushed him, still trying to defend himself, out of the studio. Go to the supermarket on the corner downstairs and buy me a bag of sugar. Go, call me if you can't find it. Then she shut the door in his face. Hanbai. At least let me grab my coat. A moment later, the door cracked open. His coat flew out, and it slammed shut again. He put it on and headed downstairs, reenacting the egg-cracking motion with his hand. What had gone wrong? At the supermarket, he followed the signs to the food section, grabbed a bag of sugar, and tossed it in his basket. Since he was already here, he figured he'd browse for anything else they might need. In the housewares aisle, he spotted a set of couple mugs, one blue with a wolf pattern, one pink with a bunny. He carefully placed them in the basket. It felt like a whole new world had opened up. Now that he and Tangning were together, they needed matching couple items. He happily scoured the store for everything couple-themed. Soon his basket was piled with matching slippers, matching pajamas, matching phone cases, the works. He stopped only when the basket was full, reluctantly heading to the checkout. If he hadn't been worried about buying too much and making her mad, he could have gone on for ages. The line at the register was long. Fu Hanbai pulled out his phone and sent Tangning a photo of the mugs with a caption, "I got us couple mugs. Let's use these from now on." He added 2 heart emojis. Then he found some "I love you" wife stickers and sent those too. Satisfied, he put his phone away. He was following the love tips he'd found online. Make your partner feel your attention and affection at all times. The line moved. He reached the counter and noticed a rack of breath mints. His heart skipped. Tangning had asked him to brush before kissing. She clearly cared about that. He'd better be ready. He grabbed a box and tossed it in, then his eyes caught something else. On a nearby shelf. A small box. When he read the label, his face went hot. Condoms. They were packaged to look like candy. He'd almost grabbed the wrong thing. He glanced again, trying to seem casual. With their current progress, they didn't need these yet. Another glance. He probably needed the largest size. He checked to make sure no one was looking, then snatched a box and buried it at the bottom of his basket. He touched his nose like nothing happened. No one noticed, right? He looked around again and grabbed another box, shoving it underneath. Just in case, just being prepared. He was a good guy. Protection was important. He thought he'd hidden them well. But when the cashier, a middle-aged woman, dumped his entire basket onto the counter, everything spilled out. The 2 condom boxes sat right on top. For a second, every eye in the vicinity was on him. His heart raced. But he kept his cool. He cleared his throat, put on his most serious expression, and said in a low, smooth voice, "I'd like to check out, please." The cashier picked up the condoms without a blink, ready to scan them. Then she noticed the size XL. She looked up and gave him a weird look. The guy was handsome enough, and his nose and hands were, well, on the larger side. "Are you sure you want the largest size? Did you check your measurements?" she asked in a flat tone. She wasn't trying to be nosy. Some men were just too confident about their size. Regular size worked for most guys. XL wasn't necessary for the majority. If the fit was wrong, the protection wouldn't be reliable, and the woman would suffer the consequences. Fu Hanbai felt the stares around him grow even more intense. There was no way to prove it. He just gave an awkward smile and covered his face with his hand. "I checked. I'm sure." After paying, he strode out of the supermarket as fast as his long legs could carry him. Next time, he'd go to an adult store if he ever got to use them. Fu Hanbai came back to Tangning's studio hauling a massive shopping bag from the supermarket. He had, of course, removed the 2 boxes of condoms first. Terrified she might spot them, he didn't even dare shove them in his coat pocket. He'd tucked them carefully into the inner lining of his jacket instead. The instant Yi Tangning saw him walk in carrying that mountain of stuff so fast, she knew something was off. She opened the bag and found matching couple sets inside, all of them in styles that were trendy 2 years ago. She nearly got lightheaded. Even middle schoolers don't do the his and hers thing anymore. Fu Hanbai is seriously a child trapped in a grown man's body. She looked into those clear, hopeful eyes of his, swallowed every sarcastic remark on her tongue, and forced out a dry laugh. Wow, you really went all out. I love it. Fu Hanbai lifted the pair of couple mugs like they were priceless artifacts and held them up in front of her. I spotted these the second I saw them. A rabbit and a wolf. Tell me they aren't absolutely perfect for us. Yi Tangning smiled and took the mug with the wolf printed on it. Yeah, I think so, too. These 2 mugs definitely fit us. Fu Hanbai froze, standing there holding the pink rabbit mug. Wait, he was supposed to use the rabbit one. Yi Tangning shot him a grin and clinked her empty mug against his. Fu Hanbai had the distinct feeling something was deeply wrong here, but he didn't dare say a word. Having successfully messed with him yet again, Yi Tangning's mood brightened. Satisfied, she went back to making her cake. She waved a dismissive hand at him. Go work on your puzzle out there. Don't bother me unless there's an emergency. She shut the door in his face without a shred of mercy. Fu Hanbai pouted pitifully, set the mug down, and turned his attention to the jigsaw puzzle spread across the table. He got lost in the puzzle world, and several hours slipped by unnoticed. By the time Yi Tangning finished all the day's orders, Fu Hanbai had completed the entire thing. She took off her apron and tucked it away in the cabinet. When she saw he was done, she wandered over to take a look. The puzzle was Little Red Riding Hood and the Big Bad Wolf. Yi Tangning stared at it. Seriously, can I not escape wolves today? She turned to grab her things and get ready to head home. Fu Hanbai secured the puzzle, snapped a photo with his phone, and thought about posting it on Moments to show off. Then he remembered he currently had exactly 1 WeChat friend. Yi Tangning find that he'd post it anyway. He could show off properly later. He kept working on it. After posting, he carefully cradled the finished puzzle in his arms like it was made of glass. He was taking this home to hang on the wall. It was a precious memory of him and Yi Tangning falling in love. The 2 of them left the studio when it was nearly dark. Yi Tangning was exhausted, so instead of buying groceries and cooking, they found a home-style restaurant nearby and grabbed dinner. After eating, both of them were a little too full. They went home to drop off their things, then headed back downstairs for a walk to digest. The building had a small garden with swings, a slide, a pull-up bar, and some other playground equipment. It wasn't cold tonight, and lots of people were out, mostly parents with kids. The parents clustered together chatting while the children ran around playing games. There were also people walking their dogs, a few joggers, and a group of older women sitting in a circle trading gossip. A handful of old men were playing chess under the lamplight, a small crowd watching over their shoulders and shaking their heads like they were dying to jump in and take over the board. It was surprisingly lively. They didn't join the crowd. Yi Tangning led Fu Hanbai along the cobblestone path on the other side of the garden. Behind the garden was a pavilion and a small lake, much quieter than the front. As they walked, breathing in the fresh air, Yi Tangning let out a long sigh. All the exhaustion from the day seemed to melt away. The distance between them kept shrinking as they walked. Their hands brushed against each other once. Then again. Ye Tangning glanced at Fu Hanbai beside her. The man wasn't looking at her. He was staring off somewhere in the distance, one hand rubbing his own nose. Way too obvious. Fu Hanbai decided this was the perfect moment to hold her hand first. He tentatively touched her soft little hand. When she didn't pull away, his courage swelled. The next time her hand swung back, he was ready to grab it, but before he could execute his plan, Yi Tangning's fingers wrapped around his first. Her skin was smooth and delicate against his. He could feel the faint texture of her palm, the softness of her fingertips. Fu Hanbai looked at her, a little sheepish. She had seen right through his scheme. Yi Tangning smiled and teased him. We've kissed several times now, and you're still shy about holding hands. Fu Hanbai interlaced his fingers with hers, his palm sweating. He told her the truth. This is the first time I've ever held a girl's hand. Yi Tangning's eyes went wide in a way, but then she remembered. Fu Hanbai had lost his memory. He didn't even know how many girls' hands he might have held before. And it's the last time. Fu Hanbai pressed his lips together, staring at her with absolute seriousness. Yi Tangning looked back at him just as seriously. Nobody could guarantee the future, but she could feel the sincerity in his heart right now. That was enough. I know. Neither of them spoke for a moment. They just stood there, holding hands, gazing at each other. The feeling between them spilled out through their eyes, thickening the air around them until it felt syrupy sweet. Fu Hanbai stepped forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, then another to the tip of her nose. Soft, tender pecks, one after another. Yi Tangning giggled because it tickled. That tickles. Her laugh was contagious, and Fu Hanbai let out a low chuckle in response. That sound, deep and magnetic, hit Yi Tangning right in the chest, sending a shiver through her entire body. They say a man's voice is his second face, and right now that felt truer than ever. When Fu Hanbai got serious, that bass voice was a weapon no woman could resist. He stopped teasing her and gently pressed his lips to her full red mouth. Yi Tangning parted her lips willingly, and they lost themselves in the kiss. In front of them, the buzz of the crowd carried on. Hiding back here to kiss felt like some kind of secret, forbidden affair. Yi Tangning could feel her own heart pounding faster than usual. Mommy, somebody's smooching over here. A mother with a little girl about 5 or 6 years old had walked past and spotted Yi Tangning and Fu Hanbai's so-called secret moment. The mother instantly clapped a hand over the girl's eyes and stammered, "They're just playing a wrestling game, sweetie. That's why they have to hold on to each other." The little girl's childish voice snapped Yi Tangning and Fu Hanbai right back to reality. Yi Tangning's face flushed scarlet, and she immediately shoved Fu Hanbai away. "Mommy's lying, their mouths touched, that is totally smooching." The girl was not buying any of it and tried to pry her mother's hand off her face to prove her point. The mother shot them an apologetic, embarrassed smile, then quickly led the little girl away. The girl kept arguing with her mother about the whole smooching debate all the way down the path. Yi Tangning touched her own burning face, threw Fu Hanbai a dirty look, and marched ahead. She knew full well she was at least half responsible for that, but it was still mortifying. She wanted to dig a hole and crawl right into it. Fu Hanbai hurried after her. "Aining, wait for me." He took her hand again, and they walked home together. When they reached the area near the pavilion, an older woman sitting on a stone bench chatting with someone called out to her. "Is that Xiao Ning?" Yi Tangning greeted her. "Grandma She." Grandma She lived in the next building. She often ordered Yi Tangning's pastries and was a regular customer. Every time Yi Tangning delivered, the old woman would press something into her hands, homemade side dishes or little fruit snacks. Grandma She's children were all busy working far away and rarely came home to, as she always put it, the food would just go to waste if she let it sit there. Yi Tangning instinctively raised her hand to wave and only then noticed that her hand was still firmly linked. With Fu Hanbai's, when she lifted her hand, his came up right along with it. Both she and Grandma She froze. Grandma She hesitated. "Xiao Ning, this is..." Yi Tangning noticed that among the group of older women chatting with Grandma She, Grandma Song from the wholesale shop was also there, watching her with a deeply knowing expression. The look said, "Caught you red-handed." Yi Tangning remembered exactly what she had told Grandma Song the other day. "Buying clothes for my cousin who's visiting. Men's underwear. Give me the biggest size. 2 pairs. Yeah, my cousin. Is a little absent-minded. Could she still make a run for it?" She glanced at Fu Hanbai, who was looking at her with eyes full of hope, his grip tightening around her hand. Apparently, running was not an option. She resigned herself to her fate, lowered her head, and forced the words out one by one. This is my boyfriend." The second Fu Hanbai heard those words, he straightened up like a soldier called to attention. Aining had just confirmed his boyfriend status. Out loud in public. He stepped forward like the rightful partner he now was and greeted every single one of those older women in front of him. Those ladies hadn't laid eyes on such a handsome young man in ages. They perked up instantly, grabbing his hand and firing off questions. "This young man is seriously good-looking. What's your name, young man? What do you do for work? Where are you from? How did you two meet? Honestly, you look perfect together. A golden couple if I've ever seen one." Fu Hanbai charmed every last one of them until they were all beaming. Grandma Song stayed seated on the bench, completely still, guarding her secrets. She had known all along. She had the inside scoop. Yi Tangning couldn't bring herself to look at the old woman. She stared at the ground and kicked a pebble. Those old ladies worked faster than the evening news. By tomorrow, the whole complex would know she had a drop-dead gorgeous boyfriend. Great, no point running now. Now that they were officially together, Fu Hanbai burned with a desperate intensity, like a house on fire. He was in his studio, checking his phone every few minutes. He'd already changed her contact name from wife Redheart # to love of my life dearest wife Redheart #. And still, nothing. Why hadn't she messaged him today? Frustration twisted in his chest. He pressed his hands to his forehead, brows drawn, eyes sharp enough to drill a hole through the screen. New couples were supposed to be glued to each other, so why was he the only one going crazy? His employees, watching him through the online meeting, saw that grim expression and traded theories. Boss must be facing something brutal. Some kind of high-stakes financial puzzle that even he couldn't crack. Fu Hanbai was thinking about one thing only. It's been 3 hours since I saw my wife. Miss her. Ding. He snatched his phone like a lifeline. The second he read the message, his dark mood evaporated. A thin smile tugged at his lips. He knew she missed him just as much. She couldn't last a minute without him. He typed into the meeting chat, "Reschedule for tomorrow." The employees stared at their screens. A flurry of question marks popped up in the chat. The legend known as Y had been shaking up the Haicheng stock market lately. He had a razor-sharp instinct for trends and potential, almost like he could see the future. He'd take a tiny amount of capital and spin it into an unbelievable fortune. Anyone who got an invitation to work with Mr. Y was thrilled. They worshipped him blindly and jumped at the chance to make their mark. Right now, they all figured boss must have something way more important to do. Fu Hanbai didn't hesitate. He shut down his computer, packed up, and left the studio. Even his footsteps came faster than usual, betraying the excitement he was holding in. Nothing mattered more than spending time with his wife. Money could be made anytime. His wife's orders were to be carried out immediately. He opened the message again. "Love of my life, dearest wife, red heart hash red heart hash red heart hash," had written. "Bring a bottle of soy sauce on your way back." Fu Hanbai grabbed the soy sauce and a box of freshly baked cream puffs, then rushed home. At the door, he straightened his shirt and tie, used his phone screen as a mirror to check his hair. Looking good today. He wanted to be at his best when his wife welcomed him. He pulled out his key, slid it into the lock, and deliberately slowed his movements to give her time to come greet him. He turned the key with a little extra force, making the lock scrape loudly. Click. The door gave way. He swung it open, expecting her sweet smile. No one was there. Confused, he stepped inside. The TV was playing some variety show. Tangning was on the couch, laughing as she dangled a cat wand for Hanbai. She glanced over. "Your back." Put the soy sauce on the kitchen shelf. Then she turned away without a second thought, waving the wand again. Hanbai tracked the toy with bright eyes, ears perked, tail swishing as he lunged again and again. Girl and cat, completely lost in their game. Not a single person or cat noticed Fu Hanbai standing frozen at the door. "Oh, right." Yi Tangning seemed to remember something. She set the wand aside and turned toward him. In the same breath, Hanbai, still curled in her lap, swiped a paw at the toy and tried to shove it into his mouth. "When you open the door, don't use so much force. This lock is old and if you break it, we'll have to pay to get it fixed." She spotted Hanbai's mischief and yanked the wand free. "Hey, Hanbai, you can't eat that." Fu Hanbai just stood there. Did anyone care if he lived or died? His status in this household had taken a nosedive. Before, it was just the two of them. Only first place and last place, and being below his wife was totally fine. Wife came first, always, but now they'd added a cat, and somehow he'd fallen even further. And he was the one who brought the cat home. He glared at Hanbai, lounging in the warm curve of Yi Tangning's arms, jealousy burning in his chest. He wanted to lie in her lap too. Today she was wearing a soft white sweater that hugged her body perfectly. Her black hair fell over her shoulders, silky and shiny, the ends still a little damp. She must have just showered. She radiated warmth and softness from across the room. He could swear he caught a hint of jasmine. The warm yellow light from the lamp fell across her face, and for a moment, he was mesmerized. She smiled, reached out to stroke Hanbai's back, then bent down and kissed the top of his head. that lit a fire in Fu Hanbai's chest. He dropped his things, strode to the couch, and scooped Danbai up by the scruff. Be gentle with him, Yi Tangning said, worried. Danbai flailed all four paws and glared at Fu Hanbai, completely forgetting this man had rescued him from the trash. Fu Hanbai looked at the squirming kitten, then raised an eyebrow and peered underneath. Boy or girl? He studied it for a moment and couldn't tell. Danbai was still too small. Didn't matter whatever it was getting neutered soon. He headed for the study, planning to put Danbai back in his cardboard box, but when he got there, the box was gone. His arms were getting tired, so he set Danbai on the floor. The second Danbai's paws hit the ground, he took off running toward the living room. Fu Hanbai followed, puzzled, and then he saw it. In the corner of the living room sat a pumpkin-shaped cat bed. Next to it, a deluxe cat tree. Danbai hopped right into his pumpkin bed, curled up, found the softest spot, and started licking his fur. Fu Hanbai, who was still sleeping on the living room sofa, felt a vein throb in his forehead. This little guy was living better than him behind his back. He couldn't take it anymore. Frowning, he stormed over to the couch, wrapped his arms around Yi Tangning from behind, and buried his face in her shoulder. He didn't say a word. She knew him well enough to recognize a sulk. He wasn't talking, but his whole body was screaming, "I'm mad, come coddle me." She reached back, covering his hands with hers where they locked around her waist, and gently traced his knuckles. Her voice softened. "What's wrong now?" He shot her a look, still holding on. No answer. Okay, he was really mad. Time to take action. Yi Tangning turned her head and pressed a quick kiss to his ear. His ear twitched, then he leaned down, lifted a hand, and tapped his lips. "Kiss me here," she chuckled. Fine, she'd indulge him today. She gave him a loud, smacking kiss right on the lips. When she pulled back, she expected a satisfied grin. Instead, he tapped his lips again. Laughing in disbelief, she grabbed a throw pillow and tossed it at him. "You're too spoiled, never satisfied, are you?" Fu Hanbai caught the pillow easily, swung his long legs onto the couch, and settled in. If his wife wouldn't come to him, he'd go to her. He leaned in and poured everything he wanted to say into the kiss. It had been 4 hours and 21 minutes since they'd last kissed. He wrapped an arm around her slender neck, closed his eyes, and deepened it. They kissed until the TV show cut to a second commercial break. When they finally pulled apart, they were both breathless. Fu Hanbai was satisfied. His anger evaporated. He pulled her into his arms, rested his head on her shoulder, and started playing with her hair. She swatted his hand. "Stop that. What's gotten into you today?" To her surprise, he sat up straight, turned to face her, and looked dead serious. "I have a question." The sudden gravity made her nervous. Her mind raced through recent events. Had something big happened? Had his memory come back? Go ahead. She sat up straighter, the smile fading. "Answer me honestly. No lying." "Okay. If Danbai and I both fell into the water, who would you save first?" Yi Tangning stared at him. She really should have known better than to expect anything sensible from this fool. "Are you seriously competing with a cat for affection?" Yi Tangning said, exasperated, but she really couldn't stay mad at Fu Hanbai. He just wrapped his arms around her, nuzzling against her neck insistently, like he wouldn't stop until he got an answer. When she didn't respond, he nipped lightly at her skin in frustration. Say it. Every bite made her slender neck tremble. Fu Hanbai seemed to enjoy the game. He moved lower and sank his teeth into her collarbone, then licked the red mark with a wet sound. Tangning felt her body go soft and tingly. Things were about to spiral. You're taking advantage of me, aren't you? She pushed his head away, her voice flustered. Fine, I'll save you first, okay? Fu Hanbai finally stopped, but not before sneaking another lick along her collarbone. His tone held a hint of grievance. You're just brushing me off. Took you forever to answer. We've only been together a few days, and you're already annoyed with me. He hugged her tighter, burying his head against her chest, his voice muffled. See, once you have me, you don't appreciate me anymore. Tangning, newly branded a heartbreaker after only days of dating, thought, is it too late to regret this? She tried to get up, but his strong arm held her in place. She couldn't escape. They fooled around on the couch for what felt like forever before she finally sat up, cheeks flushed, the corners of her eyes slightly wet. I'm done messing around. I'm going to take a shower. Fu Hanbai let her go, satisfied, and lounged lazily on the couch, savoring the memory of her touch. But the moment she headed for the bathroom, he perked up. He rummaged through the living room until he found the couple's pajamas he'd bought. He hurried over and handed her the women's set. Aining, wear these. Tangning was in a good mood tonight. She didn't mind throwing her boyfriend a bone, so she took the pajamas. Mainly because if she didn't, she had no idea what tricks Fu Hanbai would use to torture her. Soon, Fu Hanbai finished his shower too. He had deliberately changed into the matching men's set. He and Aining were wearing the same pajamas now. As he blow-dried his hair, he kept glancing at the fabric on his body, then at her bedroom door, his heart itching. They were in couple's pajamas, so why couldn't he step into her bedroom? He knew he had a record. Tangning was right to be cautious, but he still felt a little sting. He put down the hairdryer and paced outside her door a few times. The love swelling inside him was too much to contain. He really liked Aining. So much the feeling was about to overflow, because he liked her, wanting to kiss her, to touch her. That was normal, right? And Aining was obviously fond of his face and body. With that thought, Fu Hanbai cleared his throat, straightened his clothes, and deliberately unbuttoned the top 2 buttons. After confirming everything was perfect, he knocked nervously. Aining, you asleep? Almost. Let's talk tomorrow. Her voice came from inside the bedroom. Fu Hanbai paused. Her voice sounded strange, kind of floaty, like she was hiding something, was Aining up to something behind his back. Could it be? A certain possibility crossed his mind. He clenched his jaw, every muscle tensing with excitement. Slowly, he pushed the door open. I need to talk to you about something. The sight in front of him left him stunned. Tangning was lying on the bed, her entire face buried in the cat's belly, completely lost in the moment. When she saw Fu Hanbai come in, she looked up a second too late. For a moment, they just stared at each other. Fu Hanbai stared, disbelief and hurt mixing in his eyes. His hand lifted an inch, then dropped weakly, like he couldn't accept what he was seeing. It was as if he were saying, "Wife, say something." Tangning felt as awkward as if she'd been caught cheating. She opened her mouth to explain, only to realize there was a stray cat hair on her lip. She picked it off. The little cat hadn't done anything wrong. It was just too cute. It didn't understand the drama unfolding around it. It jumped gracefully off the bed and scurried away, heading back to sleep in its pumpkin-shaped bed. Fu Hanbai snapped out of it. He strode to the bed, sat down right where the cat had been, and grabbed her hand, placing it on his chest. The cat can get on the bed, so why can't I? Well. Tangning didn't know what to say. Her gaze dropped, and she noticed he'd come prepared, 2 buttons of his pajamas undone, revealing the defined muscles of his chest. She could feel the firm, solid muscle under her hand. She couldn't help but squeeze a few times. The elasticity, the feel unreal. Seeing her hesitation, Fu Hanbai pressed his advantage. He wrapped an arm around her slender waist and deliberately used that coaxing, childish tone he knew she liked. I promise I won't do anything, just sleep, just one night, okay? I'll warm the bed for you, warm your feet. I'm really warm. He lifted his head and guided her hand down to his abs. You said you wouldn't do anything. If you can't control yourself, you'll never sleep in my bed again. Tangning felt the heat radiating from his body and started to waver. She'd always had poor circulation. Her feet were like ice in winter. If she stayed still too long, her calves would go numb. Doctors told her to manage it, but she was always too busy and forgot. Now there was a ready-made bed warmer, and he was her boyfriend. A little practicality on her part shouldn't be a problem, right? She pulled her hand away, turned around, and slipped under the covers, a little shy. Just tonight. In her entire life, this was the first time she'd ever shared a bed with someone of the opposite sex, even if he was her boyfriend. Fu Hanbai was so excited he could practically wag his tail. Really? The words tumbled out. You can't take it back. Without wasting a second, he didn't even bother with slippers. He ran barefoot to the living room to grab his pillow. Less than 10 seconds later, he was back, diving under the covers and pulling Tangning into his arms. Tangning sighed. Let go. He buried his face in the nape of her neck, holding her even tighter. No, I promised to warm your bed. She pinched his arm hard. I need to turn off the light. He reluctantly loosened his grip. Fine. She clicked off the light. Darkness and silence filled the bedroom. Moonlight filtered through the curtains, casting soft shadows on the floor. A cold wind rattled the windows now and then, sending slivers of chill through the cracks. With the lights off, all her other senses sharpened. Tangning felt the furnace of Fu Hanbai's body warming her back. She'd never felt so comfortable. Instinctively, she scooted closer to the heat source, soaking in the peace and warmth. Everything around her started to blur. She blinked a few times and slowly drifted off to sleep. Fu Hanbai, however, was wide awake. This was the first time they'd shared a bed since they started dating. Being this close to the person he loved, sharing the same warmth and heartbeat, the satisfaction left him speechless. Even through the pajamas, he could feel the softness of her body beneath his hand. He kept his arm wrapped around her slim waist, afraid to move. Part of his mind wandered, but another part felt fiercely protective. She was so thin, his hand could easily span her waist. He'd have to feed her more, help her gain some weight. He wanted to chat with her for a while. He leaned close to her ear and whispered, Aining? The only response was her steady, even breathing. She was already asleep. This close, the subtle fragrance of her hair hit his nose, warming his cheeks. He closed his eyes, propped himself up slightly, and pressed a careful kiss to her hair. "Good night, wife." He lay back on the pillow, closed his eyes, and tried to fall asleep. He was a little too excited. He took slow, deep breaths. After what felt like an eternity, he finally felt a faint drowsiness settle in. Then, in her sleep, Tangning turned over, facing him. As if she sensed the loss of the warmth behind her, she mumbled something discontentedly and burrowed deeper into his arms. The second she turned, Hanbai snapped, fully awake. Every trace of sleep vanished. In the darkness, he opened his eyes, blinking in a mix of bliss and agony. Tonight, was he ever going to get any sleep? The moment Tangning hugged him, Hanbai's whole body went stiff. His voice came out rough, barely a whisper. "Aning. Aning, are you awake?" Hearing him, Tangning burrowed deeper into his chest, resting her head on his warm torso before falling back asleep. Their bodies pressed together, her soft breaths hitting his chest muscles, making every inch of him tense. A jolt shot straight through him. She wasn't awake. Hanbai dug his nails into his palm. He could handle this. He just had to. He held his breath, slowly inching backward under the covers, but the moment he moved an inch, he froze. Tangning frowned in her sleep, then wrapped her arms tighter around his waist, as if to keep him from running. Their bodies plastered together again. Veins bulged on Hanbai's forehead. His Adam's apple bobbed as he let out a low groan, whether from pain or pleasure, he couldn't tell. With the warmth back against her, Tangning finally settled, her breathing evening out. Hanbai's heart loosened a little. He reached down and patted her back soothingly. "I'm not going anywhere. Sleep." Once she was fully asleep, he'd adjust his position. No rush, but fate had other plans. The next second, Tangning yanked him closer, hooked a leg over his, and wrapped herself around him like a vine. Her thighs slid between his knees, brushing against something very dangerous. This time, no matter how hard he dug his nails into his palm, it wasn't enough. Blood rushed south, every muscle locked, his breathing turned ragged. Feeling the undeniable change, Hanbai let out a helpless exhale. He lifted his hand and stared at the red crescents carved into his palm. Even in the dark, they were visible. Proof of his restraint. He was a volcano on the verge of eruption. Any tiny spark could set him off. In the dim moonlight, he fixed his red-rimmed eyes on Tangning, like a wolf zeroing in on its prey. She was dead asleep, her cheeks squished against the pillow, making her face look soft and impossibly cute. Her skin gleamed a stark white in the darkness, searing his vision and shredding what little patience he had left. He reached out, brushed his fingers over that smooth, silky cheek. He traced it once, twice, then gently swept a strand of hair behind her ear. He pulled his hand back, barely holding on. A war raged in his head. One voice, an angel, chided him. "Don't do this. Be a gentleman." Another voice, the devil, whispered, "You're not actually doing anything, just touching. Why suffer so much?" Then Tangning parted her lips in her sleep, muttering something, her small pink tongue flicking in and out of view. Hanbai's temple pulsed. The last thread of his will snapped. He couldn't stop himself. He slid a finger between her lips, playing with her tongue, savoring its softness and give. After what felt like forever, he pulled his hand out, fingers glistening with damp traces of her dazed. He ran them over her full lips, then down over her chin, her neck, her collarbone, leaving a wet trail lower. He stared at the exposed skin. The pajamas he'd bought her had a wide neckline, and in her restless sleep, it had slipped, revealing a wide expanse of pale chest. In the dark, it was blinding, taunting, shredding his already frayed nerves. He swallowed hard. The sound was loud in the silence. Then Tangning, as if sensing the cold, grumbled and kicked out, shoving him. Hanbai, barely balanced, toppled half out of bed, barely catching himself before he hit the floor. The cold air hit his bare skin like a slap. It shocked him back to his senses. What the hell had he just done? He'd promised her, sworn, he wouldn't do anything. Was he going to break his word? How could she ever trust him again? A wave of dread washed over him. He sat there, motionless, cold sweat breaking out on his face. He turned and looked at her restless sleeping face, cursing himself a dozen times in his head. Shameless. She trusted you, and this is how you repay her. He carefully pulled the covers over her, then reached to the other side of the bed and grabbed a soft puppy plushie. She usually slept with it, but tonight she'd traded him, the untrustworthy golden retriever, for it. He tucked the plushie into her arms. She immediately hugged it tight, her furrowed brow relaxing. Hanbai sat by the bed for a while, doing nothing but watching her sleep. Then he slowly leaned down and pressed a kiss to her forehead. It carried no desire. I'm sorry. Ning. He glanced down at his own body, at the very awake part of him that seemed to be greeting him. He grimaced, licked his teeth, and turned toward the bathroom. Looked like he'd be taking matters into his own hands for a while. The bathroom light stayed on for a long time. Blearily, Tangning cracked her eyes open at the glow. She reached out. Nothing. Bathroom. She forced her eyes to stay open, waiting. But he didn't come back. Kid's been in there forever. Either he's got a weak bladder or, nah. She rolled over, hugged the puppy tight, and drifted off again. Warm sunlight streamed through the curtains. Tangning blinked awake, sat up, yawned, and stretched her arms wide. She hadn't slept this well since she moved into that rental. As she stretched, she tried to piece together her dream. She'd been running through a forest, and a big bear came out. She'd been scared, but the bear was friendly, played with her all night. Then she got cold, so she hugged it tight for warmth. But just as she started to warm up, the bear's mouth opened and a snake's tongue came out, long, thin, licking her whole face. She'd kicked it away. Weird dream. She got dressed, slipped on her slippers, opened the curtains and window, and breathed in the fresh air. She felt amazing. A flutter of wings. A small bird landed on the utility pole outside her window, grey head and chest, red-bellied. It cocked its head at her, meeting her eyes. So cute. Tangning's eyes went wide. She'd never seen a bird like that before. Not wanting to scare it, she barely breathed. She turned excitedly, ready to call a bye to come see, but the bed was empty. Right. He'd slept with her last night. Where was he now? The bird chirped once and flew away. Tangning sighed. Should have grabbed my phone first. She walked into the living room, calling his name. A bye? Where'd that kid go? Last night he'd begged to sleep with her, and now he was gone. She found him in his usual spot, the living room couch. He towered over the tiny sofa, his thighs and waist pressed against the edges, his feet awkwardly propped on the armrest. His brows were furrowed, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. He looked like he hadn't slept well. Seeing him curled up so miserably, Tangning's heart softened. She placed her hand on his waist and shook him gently. Bye, go sleep in my bed. Don't stay on the couch. He stirred at her touch, slowly opening his eyes. It took him a moment to focus. When he spoke, his voice cracked so badly that both of them froze. It was hoarse, almost unrecognizable. Tangning pulled him up, her tone edged with concern. When did you come back to the couch? You didn't even cover yourself properly. You caught a cold. She steered him to the bedroom, tucked him into her bed, and told him not to fall asleep yet. She was going to make him some cold medicine. Okay, he rasped, not meeting her eyes. He couldn't. He was too ashamed. Last night, while she slept, he'd done that. He was a scumbag. A creep. He'd spent forever in the cold bathroom, only able to finish by thinking of her face. And now he was stuck here, sick, with her fussing over him. He lay in bed, unable to stop replaying last night. The pale skin, the wet tongue. It all flashed back like it was happening now. Heat flooded him again, spreading from his chest to every limb. It wouldn't stop until it burned him alive. He slowly pulled the blanket over his head. He couldn't face her. Tangning found the unfinished cold medicine, poured it into his pink bunny mug, added hot water, and stirred until the granules dissolved. Then she hurried back to the bedroom, carrying the mug carefully. Winter drinks cool fast. Drink it while it's hot, she said, worry clear in her voice. When she stepped in, she saw he'd pulled the covers over his head. She sighed and yanked them back. I said drink this first. Under the blanket, Hanbai's face was flushed, his brows tight. He looked pained, her heart clenched. Was he running a fever? She propped him up against the headboard, then leaned in, pressing her forehead to his to check his temperature. Not hot. Then why is your face so red? She muttered, confused. They were inches apart. Her warm breath hit his face. He squeezed his eyes shut, wanting to cry. Then a sharp sting hit his nose, and Tangning gasped. Why are you nosebleeding? Hanbai touched his nose. His fingers came away wet and red. Tilt your head back. No, forward, whatever. Just hold still. Use your hand. Don't drip on my bed. She scrambled off to find tissues. Hanbai clamped his hand over his nose and stayed frozen. Fine. The couch. It is outside. The red-bellied bird flew past the window, letting out a sharp, bright call. The chaotic morning continued. Right there. A little harder. Soft, breathy moans drifted from the bedroom. Tangning lay face down on the bed, groaning with pure satisfaction as a pair of large hands worked her lower back with perfect pressure. Hanbai knelt beside her, his palms gliding over her slender waist, tapping, circling, then pressing up in firm, steady strokes. He might as well have been a professional massage therapist. He kept his eyes down, mouth shut, refusing to let his gaze wander anywhere inappropriate. He was a humble man, just doing his job. His nose still throbbed faintly from that morning's sting. He wasn't about to get cocky again. Every time he did, he paid for it. That morning, Tangning had noticed Hanbai wasn't feeling well and offered to stay home and take care of him. But he'd slept until noon and woken up full of energy again. Guess youth really did have its perks. With nothing else to do, Tangning rubbed her own slightly sore back and sprawled in a patch of sunlight on the bed. This weather was made for doing absolutely nothing. Seeing that, Fu Hanbai volunteered to take over. This weather was made for massaging his wife. Hanbai the cat noticed both his humans were home today and had been doing something strange on the bed that he hopped up to investigate. The little kitten heard Yi Tangning moaning while Fu Hanbai's hands kept moving around her waist and immediately thought the man was bullying her. Hanbai let out a few deep purrs, then yowled at Fu Hanbai as fiercely as a tiny cat could manage. Fu Hanbai shooed him with one hand. Go play somewhere else. I'm busy taking care of your mom. But Hanbai was convinced the guy was still picking on Yi Tangning, so he sank his teeth into Fu Hanbai's sleeve, his small face scrunched up like he'd never let go until the man stopped. Fu Hanbai sighed. This cat really seemed to enjoy watching him suffer. Yi Tangning saw the commotion and couldn't help laughing. She patted the space beside her. Hanbai, stop bothering your dad, come here. That one sentence soothed both the cat and the man. She had called him your dad, and Fu Hanbai's heart swelled. The sudden happiness made him press a little too hard, and Yi Tangning let out a surprised grunt. He immediately softened his touch, guilt flooding his face as he gently rubbed the spot. My fault, Aining. Does it hurt? Yi Tangning's cheeks flushed from the sun, or maybe from his hands. She felt his warm, calloused fingers gliding across her bare skin, each stroke sending sparks through her body, an unnameable sensation rising. But she was too shy to say that. She stammered, "It doesn't hurt. Don't just focus on my waist. Try somewhere else." Fu Hanbai obediently pulled his hands out from under her shirt and settled her legs over his stomach, his thumbs digging into her calves. At Yi Tangning's call, Hanbai trotted over on his stubby legs and curled up beside her. She scratched under his chin, and he closed his eyes in bliss, purring softly as he soaked in the sunlight. The little guy drifted right off to sleep. Yi Tangning smiled, pulled out her phone, and snapped a picture. Hanbai is so cute. Fu Hanbai felt a little sting of jealousy. Without stopping his massage, he leaned his upper body into the frame. Yi Tangning glanced at the shot and nearly laughed. Fu Hanbai's head took up half the picture, and even from that terrible angle, his handsome face still shone in the background. The cat was out cold, completely oblivious to his stolen spotlight. She saved the photo. She'd use it to tease him someday. Scrolling through her phone, a thought struck her. She twisted around to face him. Should I buy you a bed? Why would you buy me a bed all of a sudden? I feel bad you're sleeping on the couch every night. We could probably squeeze a bed into the study. What do you think? Afraid he'd refuse to spend the money, she rushed to add, a bed won't cost much. I'll buy it for you. Fu Hanbai kept kneading her calf, thinking, not a chance. If he got a bed, he'd lose his excuse to be near her at night, and the thing he really wanted would slip even further out of reach. His hands drifted up from her calf, past her knee. A little higher and he'd be in dangerous territory. Yi Tangning sat upright, smacked his hand away, and raised her voice. Where do you think you're touching, you perv? Fu Hanbai snapped back to reality, yanked his hand down, and swallowed his frustration through gritted teeth. He said, no need. I like the couch. Really? Yi Tangning didn't get it. Maybe he felt safer in small spaces. Some people were like that. Then an idea lit up her eyes. Hey, is this your unlucky zodiac year of the rat or something? No wonder everything's been going wrong for you. Increasingly sure of herself, She opened a shopping app. I'll buy you 2 pairs of red boxers to ward off bad luck. No way she'd go back to Granny Song's wholesale store downstairs, especially for underwear. Fu Hanbai. Whatever made Aining happy. Just as she placed the order, her best friend Wu Yu's messages flooded Ye Tangning opened them. Ning, whatcha doing? Haven't heard from you in days. You making out with your boyfriend or what? Face turning red. JPG, did you see the high school group chat? They set the time and place for the reunion. You going? If you go, I go. Ye Tangning had already told Wu Yu about her relationship with Fu Hanbai, no point hiding it, but she'd left out the part about picking him up off the street. She just said he was down on his luck and crashing at her place. Feeling guilty, she angled her phone away so he couldn't see the screen and quickly typed back, "Don't say stuff like that. We're not at that stage yet." Wu Yu was horrified and shot back instantly. What? You haven't? A hottie like that and you're wasting him? Is he not good in bed? Ye Tangning stole a glance at Fu Hanbai. He was wearing loose joggers, kneeling there with the outline pretty obvious. She remembered helping him to the bathroom before. The size was undeniable, but last night he'd spent a long time in the bathroom. Was there actually something wrong in that department? Fu Hanbai caught his wife's weird look and raised his clear, confused eyes. If he knew she was questioning his manhood, he'd drop everything and prove it on the spot. Ye Tangning quickly looked away and changed the subject, letting out an awkward laugh. What are you talking about? Ha, what reunion? Let me check the group. Wu Yu sent back a knowing emoji. Nice save. Like she couldn't tell Ye Tangning was dodging. Ye Tangning opened the long-ignored high school group chat and saw a pinned message from class monitor Jiao Yuan. This Sunday at 7 p.m. Emperor Hotel My treat. Let's have a proper old classmates get-together. Those who can come, type 1 in the group so I can count heads and make arrangements. She'd been busy and had kept the group on mute, but the moment the monitor's message dropped, the chat exploded. Emperor Hotel was one of the top restaurants in Haicheng. Even the smallest private room cost a fortune, and money alone wasn't enough. You needed serious connections to book a table. Only people with real power and wealth could dine there. Suddenly everyone was buttering up the monitor, flattery flying in every direction. Boss Gao is the man. Don't forget us now that you're rich. Friends in need are friends indeed. Ye Tangning found it all pretty amusing. Then she hesitated. Should she go? Last time she was at Yutsai High School, she'd run into their old classmate Wang Xin, and the sarcasm dripping from her words was impossible to miss. If Wang Xin showed up at the reunion, she'd definitely cause drama. Just thinking about it gave Ye Tangning a headache. While she was still on the fence, a new message appeared. She thought it was Wu Yu, but it was Jiao Yuan again. Tangning, I noticed you haven't replied in the group. Are you busy that day? Can't make it? Back in high school, they'd both been top students, one strong in English, the other in math, and had often helped each other with homework. But the moment she sensed he had a crush on her, she'd pulled back. First, she needed to focus on senior year. Second, he wasn't her type anyway. After the college entrance exam, he'd tried to ask her out, but she politely refused. They'd ended up at different schools and eventually lost touch. Now he was messaging her privately. Was he trying to let bygones be bygones, or had he never really given up? She couldn't tell, but it looked like she had to go to this reunion. Either way, she needed to make things clear. She set her phone down and looked at Fu Hanbai still focused on massaging her feet, and at Danbai purring in his sleep. Her home already had both a dog and a cat, there wasn't room for anyone else. She first replied to Jiao Yuan, "Sorry, I didn't see the message earlier. I'm free that day. I'll be there." Then she messaged Wu Yu, "I'm in, come to my place Sunday and we'll go together." She crawled over to Fu Hanbai and gave him a reward kiss for massaging her all afternoon. One kiss wasn't nearly enough for him. He took control immediately, deepening it. Soon they collapsed onto the bed, a tangle of limbs, the room filling with wet kisses and Yi Tongning's playful scolding. But little did she know, her name had already stirred up a storm in the high school group chat. Sunday afternoon, Yi Tangning sat on the couch, laughing at a new variety show while she knitted a tiny sweater for Danbai. The cat was curled on the armrest, tail wrapped around himself, methodically licking one paw and swiping it across his face. The red boxes she'd bought for Fu Hanbai had arrived a few days ago. When she handed them over, he'd wrapped his arms around her and refused to let go, murmuring about what a good wife she was. He'd even transferred 8,000 yuan from his phone, claiming it was his entire month's salary, handed over to his wife. Tangning hadn't put up much of a fight before accepting. She just silently marveled at how profitable milk tea shops were these days, or maybe it was more accurate to say good looks really could make money after all. Fu Hanbai had been scouted by a talent agent just from handing out flyers outside the shop across town. Fu Hanbai sat in a meeting with his employees, his expression composed but something bitter simmering. Underneath, he was wearing those red boxes. He really did make a living through his skills, not just his face. He knew if he transferred too much, Tangning would get suspicious, so he'd capped it at 8,000. He didn't want to keep lying to her forever. But this wasn't a truth he could just blurt out. He planned to come clean during the new year. Surely she wouldn't kick him out during the holidays, boss? The employee giving the online report grew more nervous with every second of silence. Was the report so terrible the boss didn't even want to comment? Fu Hanbai cleared his throat awkwardly. "Sorry, could you start over from the beginning?" The employee just stared. Tangning didn't blow the money Fu Hanbai had sent. She deposited it into a separate savings account, keeping it distinct from her own funds. But she wasn't trying to draw a hard line between them. They'd been living together long enough for that. She used that card to buy him a cashmere sweater and a wool overcoat, something for him to wear when they visited relatives during the new year. Then she bought Danbai some imported cat food and toys. After all, Danbai was his son too. Spending his money on the cat was only fair. Wait, son or daughter? She still didn't know Danbai's gender. The thought, she set down her knitting and reached for the cat, still midlick, quick as a flash. Tangning grabbed Danbai by the scruff and lifted him up for a closer look. The cat yowled in surprise, claws splaying, paws flailing in the air. Mew mew mew. "Mom, what the heck?" Tangning pushed aside his batting paws and squinted. She thought she spotted something resembling little balls. It's a boy. Satisfied, she set Danbai back on the couch. The cat seemed to lose all will to live. He stopped grooming and just mewed softly at her. Mew mew mew. Humans are all the same. I have no dignity left. I can't show my face in cat society anymore. Tangning stared at the half-finished sweater in her hands and went quiet for a moment. Then she smiled and kept knitting. No big deal, boys could wear pink sailor sweaters too. Ning, it's me, open up. The knock came just as Tangning was fully absorbed in her catson's wardrobe. Wu Yu's booming voice followed, right through the apartment door. Tangning glanced at the time. She hadn't realized it was already this late, less than 2 hours until the class reunion. She set down the yarn and sweater and went to answer. Coming, she opened the door. Instead of barging in like usual, Wu Yu poked her head inside first and whispered, "Is your man home? He's working late tonight." Tangning found her friend's hesitation amusing and pulled her inside. "Since when did you get so polite?" Fu Hanbai had told her a few days ago he'd be working late tonight. Honestly, Tangning had felt relieved when she heard if he'd insisted on tagging along to the reunion, she wouldn't have been able to come up with a good excuse to say no. She didn't want to steal the spotlight tonight, she just wanted to quietly settle some old high school baggage if he came too. She didn't even want to imagine that scene. "I didn't want to interrupt anything steamy," Wu Yu said, rubbing the back of her head once. She knew her bestie's boyfriend was out. She dropped the stiff politeness and strode all the way in. "That's a shame. The class monitor said we could bring +1s. With your boyfriend's looks in your face, you two would be the ultimate power couple tonight. Knock everyone dead." "Power couple? You've been playing too many card games." Tangning wasn't falling for it. She closed the door. She thought to herself, "That's exactly why I didn't want him to come." She turned around and finally got a good look at Wu Yu's outfit. She circled her friend, impressed. "You look amazing tonight." Wu Yu might have a brash personality, but she was far from plain. She was genuinely pretty, solidly in cute girl territory tonight. She'd clearly put extra effort into her outfit, and it showed. She was absolutely stunning, and probably freezing. Underneath a long black and white houndstooth coat that hit just below her calves, she wore a white turtleneck, a black skirt, and black stockings. A brown messenger bag was slung diagonally over the coat, cinching her waist and showing off her figure. "Damn, aren't you cold? I checked, today's low is freezing," Tangning said, already feeling sorry for her friend's bare legs. "Come on, it's been ages since we've seen everyone. I can't let the other girls show me up. They're all gonna dress to kill too. And I'm wearing fleece-lined tights, not cold at all." Wu Yu slipped off her heels and pinched the fabric on her thigh to prove it, revealing the telltale texture of the thermal layer. Even with fleece tights, it's still cold. Tangning shook her head with a sigh and headed toward the bedroom. "I'll go change, wait for me on the couch." "Go ahead." Wu Yu waved her off and made a beeline for the kitten tangled in yarn on the couch. She scooped him up and started planting kisses. "Hanbai, how did you get like this? Did you miss Auntie? Let Auntie give you some sugar." Hanbai, now with pink yarn wrapped around his head, found himself in Wu Yu's clutches and subjected to a barrage of kisses. Even from a distance, Tangning could feel the cat's utter confusion and despair. She smiled, walked into her room, and opened her closet. Then she just stood there, staring at her limited options. Money had been tight the past few years. She'd been running between the hospital and her studio, with no time to think about her wardrobe. In college, she'd been proud and often saved up to buy brand-name clothes and bags. Now, her closet held mostly affordable, comfortable pieces. She stood in silence for a moment, then pulled out 2 outfits she thought were acceptable and changed. Tangning walked out of the bedroom and closed the door behind her. "Wu Yu, I'm ready. Let's go. Hearing this, Wu Yu reluctantly peeled herself away from the kitten's soft belly and looked at Tangning. Hanbai seized the chance to escape the terrifying woman's clutches and vanished in a flash. You're wearing that to the reunion? Are you kidding me, Ning? Wu Yu's voice shot up an octave as she stared at Tangning's outfit in disbelief. Tangning felt like her eardrums might burst. She tugged at her clothes awkwardly, suddenly doubting her own fashion sense. Was it really that bad? She'd thought it looked fine. To be fair, it wasn't ugly. A puffy white down jacket with light blue jeans, a simple, casual look. On Tangning, it still came off youthful and fresh, highlighting her pure, gentle vibe, but it wasn't nearly enough. Wu Yu strode over and grabbed Tangning's puffy sleeve, practically hopping. Okay. Forget class flower, you were at least the prettiest girl in our grade. Tonight is the moment. You should be slaying. Why didn't you prepare a battle outfit? But it's cold outside. Tangning felt a little defensive. Cold? Who cares? Youth means going all out. Wu Yu smacked her own chest. Do you think I'd let you freeze? I'll pay for a cab. You have no idea what people are saying in the group chat. We don't need to win bread, but we need to win face. Group chat. Tangning was confused. What are they saying about me? At that, Wu Yu choked, coughing violently. She'd been fuming about this for days, and the person in question had been living in peaceful ignorance. Still coughing, Wu Yu fumbled for her phone and pulled up the chat history. Cough, cough, cough. Here, look. Tangning patted her back while reading the screen. Wu Yu was showing her the chat logs from their senior year group. Yesterday, the class monitor had announced that Tangning would attend the weekend reunion, and the group had blown up. Since the monitor had relayed the message, and Tangning hadn't posted in the group forever, everyone seemed to assume she wasn't even in the chat. They spoke freely. Hey, monitor, what's your deal with Tangning? Why are you passing messages for her? Tangning, I remember her. She was the prettiest girl in our grade back in senior year when she had PE. A bunch of guys would crowd around the playground to watch. Oh yeah, the girl who sat by the window. Senior year was hell, but she was still gorgeous, like, actually gorgeous. I haven't heard anything about her since graduation. Wonder how she's doing now. She was such a good student back then. The other day I went to pick up my nephew from school, and I saw Tangning outside the gate. She was selling street food from a stall. That was Wang Xin, seizing her chance to take a shot at Tangning, but she held back on mentioning Tangning's boyfriend, who was hotter than any celebrity. Didn't she get into a university in the capital? Why would she be selling food outside a school? I vaguely heard from someone that Tangning's mom got sick, so she quit her job and moved back to take care of her. Everyone murmured sympathetically. Who would have thought the girl who was top of the class and stunningly beautiful would end up like this? Then someone suddenly posted a screenshot of the group members, circling Tangning's name in graffiti. Tangning is in this group. Guys. After that message, silence fell. People scrambled to unsend their messages, and those who couldn't just played dead. Wu Yu was indignant. I was in the group when it happened. I didn't want to cause a scene, so I didn't call them out, but I screenshot everything. Later the monitor used admin powers to delete all the messages about you shameless bastards. Especially Wang Xin. Good thing I kept receipts. So what if you set up a stall? Did we eat your rice? Making an honest living isn't shameful. Seeing Wu Yu getting more worked up, Tangning quickly soothed her. Don't get mad, getting angry over people like that isn't worth it. Honestly, Tangning had never cared much what others thought of her, but today, if only for her best friend Wu Yu, she was going to step up. Help me put together an outfit, Tangning said, admitting defeat. Wu Yu's face instantly transformed from storm clouds to sunny skies. She gave Tangning a sly grin. I knew you'd cave, so I already booked us for a 5:30 appointment at the beauty salon. Tangning just stared. Wu Yu wrapped an arm around Tangning's waist and waved her other hand grandly. I just got my year-end bonus tonight. It's on me. Our grade flowers prestige must be up hell. But by the time we're done at the beauty salon, it'll be late. We'll be late to the reunion. Tangning checked the time, worried. Wu Yu raised a finger and pressed it to Tangning's lips in a shushing gesture. Her voice was laced with barely contained excitement as she said, word by word, don't you know, the protagonist always arrives last. Tangning felt more and more like she was being set up by her bestie, but at this point, she had no choice but to go along with it. Silently, she prayed tonight would be a peaceful one. Let me settle down by first. Tangning filled his bowl with food and water, double-checked the windows and doors, and finally patted his head. Be good and wait for mommy at home, okay? Hanbai was too busy scarfing down his kibble to care. He gave a perfunctory mew. Just go already, humans are such a hassle. Oh, right. Before leaving, Tangning remembered to grab her pickle green bag. Tangning stepped out of the taxi and the wind hit her like a blade. She hugged herself, shivering hard. Wu Yu came up behind her, rubbing her shoulders and steering her toward the entrance. Get inside now. I can't feel my face. They hurried toward the Imperial Hotel. The building was a monument of Baroque excess, carved stone arches, towering columns, marble so polished it reflected the streetlights back at you. Every detail was designed to announce that people with serious money passed through these doors. A doorman in a tailcoat bowed as they approached. Wu Yu leaned in, voice low. Now I get why it costs a fortune to eat here. They've got to pay off the renovation debt somehow. A Rolls-Royce glided to the curb. A valet sprinted out, bowed, and took the keys. A man stepped out first, blonde, curly-haired, blue eyes sharp against the winter air. He wore a wool coat over a tailored suit, leather boots clicking against the pavement. The woman behind him was tall, sleek, her hair swept into a low twist. Red suit, red heels, a black Chanel shoulder bag tucked under her arm. She moved like she belonged 3 steps behind him. An assistant, maybe or someone who wanted you to think she was. The pair disappeared through the entrance. Wu Yu grabbed Tangning's arm and made a noise somewhere between a gasp and a scream. That bag, Chanel Point 2023 collection, you can't just buy it, you need a relationship with the brand. That's a down payment on a house hanging off her shoulder. She stomped her heel against the pavement. I hate this. Comparison is a disease and I'm dying. Tangning pulled her own bag closer to her body and towed Wu Yu through the revolving door. Look at the time. We stall any longer and the reunion will be over before we sit down. The front desk clerk greeted them with a smile so practiced it looked plastic. Do you have a reservation? Yes, room 1022. Please provide the room password. The smile didn't move, but the warmth behind it flickered and died. Rooms starting with 10 were the bottom tier at the Imperial Gold VIP card, basic booking. Guests in those rooms were either new money pretending to be old or strivers cosplaying as elite. Tangning fumbled for her phone and scrolled through the chat log. It's N892M2+. She read it out and resisted the urge to roll her eyes. What kind of sadist designed these passwords? The clerk handed over 2 keycards. Your room keys, someone will escort you. A uniformed attendant appeared and led them down the corridor. Wu Yu leaned into Yi Tangning's ear. This is a first. I've never been escorted anywhere. Yi Tangning half covered her mouth. Same, trying not to look impressed. The attendant stopped abruptly. They both flinched. Your room is just ahead. Enjoy your meal, ladies. A precise 90-degree bow, and she was gone already. They approached the door. Muffled voices bled through before they touched the handle. Class President, you've really made it. A private room at the Imperial. Don't forget about us small-timers now. I always knew you'd be the one to watch, even back in school. You're all too generous. I'm doing fine, just fine. So, Class Prez, are you seeing anyone? That message you posted in the group chat about our campus beauty. You never did explain that one. The laughter was still rolling when the door swung open. Heels clicked. 2 figures stepped into the light. The room fell dead quiet. For a long beat, no one recognized them. Wu Yu was a revelation. The black dress, the sheer stockings drawing the eye down the length of her legs, the fresh hair and makeup. She looked nothing like the gawky girl from their high school memories, but Yi Tangning, standing in front of her, made the silence ache. They'd always known she was beautiful, but the image they'd carried was a barefaced teenager with a ponytail and a backpack. The woman in front of them now wore a fitted base layer that traced every curve, a checked pencil skirt that emphasized the impossible ratio of her waist to her hips, and leather boots that made her legs look carved from marble. A white coat hung to her ankles, making her skin glow like fresh snow. Innocent and devastating in the same breath, the stylist had given her waves. Full, bouncy, cascading past her shoulders when she moved. The scent of freesia drifted off the strands. Pearl earrings. A matching necklace. She looked expensive in a way that had nothing to do with money. She ran a hand through her hair and smiled at the frozen room, eyes curving with just a hint of mischief. Why'd everyone stop talking? The spell shattered. People rushed to greet them. Class President Jiao Yuan pointed to the seat beside him. Tangning, sit here. He'd kept it empty on purpose. Waiting. Yi Tangning scanned the table. No other open chairs. She slid into the spot, and Jiao Yuan immediately waved a server over to squeeze in an extra seat for Wu Yu. Glances flickered around the table. No mystery there. The class president had it bad for Yi Tangning. Everyone filed the information away. The energy kicked back up. Greetings flew across the room, old jokes, quick compliments, the rustle of bodies settling back into their chairs. A few people whispered. Behind their hands. Wasn't Yi Tangning supposed to be struggling? She looked anything but. The rumors must have been garbage. They pretended the group chat gossip had never happened and jostled each other to say hello. Wang Xin watched the crowd orbit around Yi Tangning and nearly snapped the stem of her wine glass. She'd paid for a rhinoplasty premium hyaluronic injections. A makeup artist who spent 4 hours on her face alone. The entire night was supposed to be hers. Every head was supposed to turn for her. And Yi Tangning, effortless, glowing Yi Tangning, had stolen it all without a word. She shot a glare at her husband. Yu Chong's eyes were glued to Yi Tangning like he'd never seen a woman before. Under the table, Wang Xin drove her stiletto heel into the top of his foot. He yelped, caught her death stare, dropped his gaze to his plate immediately. Wang Xin sniffed and turned her attention back to Yi Tangning. That's when she noticed the bag. She squinted, stared harder, confirmed it. Wang Xin settled back in her chair. She lifted her wine glass and took a slow, delicate sip. Got you. Now let's see you squirm in front of everyone. Yi Tangning set her bag down and studied the private room. Warm-toned velvet wallpaper, ornate sconces, oil paintings in gilded frames. The table and chairs were rosewood with intricate carvings and brass inlays, like they'd been lifted from a 19th century European estate. So that's what imperial-level money bought. She scanned her classmates. About 20 people split between two tables, voices overlapping, glasses clinking. Lively, almost aggressively cheerful. From the chatter she'd caught at the door, she understood the dynamic perfectly. Everyone wanted to bask in the class president's glow and get a free meal at the imperial bragging rights for the next decade. If they could hitch themselves to his trajectory, even better. So many faces she barely recognized. She leaned toward Wu Yu and lowered her voice. The guy in the blue shirt with the gut. Is that our high school English rep? Wu Yu squinted across the room. After a pause, she answered, uncertain. Face looks close, but how did he get that fat? Kid was a skeleton in school. They exchanged a look and stifled giggles. Even Jiao Yuan had transformed. In high school, he'd been forgettable, quiet, glasses, kept to himself, not ugly, just invisible. Not anymore. Tailored shirt and vest. Clean side part. Silver-framed glasses. He moved through the dinner conversation with easy confidence. No trace of the awkward kid who used to sit in the back corner. What's so funny? Jiao Yuan handed Wu Yu a set of utensils. As he reached across, he leaned slightly closer to Yi Tangning, caught the scent in her hair. His pulse kicked up hard. He'd rolled up his sleeves deliberately. The omega on his wrist caught the light 18-karat gold, square-round case, classic band, tasteful. Solid, the kind of watch that said I'm doing well without having to open his mouth. He'd prepared everything for tonight. Head-to-toe wardrobe. Begged his boss for weeks to borrow the hotel's VIP card, all of it to make the right impression on Yi Tangning. Yes, he worked at a major corporation, but he was only a secretary, decent salary, but nowhere near private room at the imperial money on his own. He signaled the server to begin serving. Yi Tangning offered an apologetic nod. Sorry we're late. You really didn't have to hold dinner for us. A male classmate on Jiao Yuan's other side, quick to read the room, caught the way Jiao Yuan angled his body toward Yi Tangning and jumped on the earlier conversation. We weren't waiting long at all. We were literally just talking about you, Tangning, and then you walked in. He flicked a look between her and Jiao Yuan, his tiny eyes narrowing with theatrical implication. Why'd you ask the class president to pass along a message for you anyway? You two got something going on we should know about. The male classmate next to Jiao Yuan had barely finished his question when the room went conspicuously quiet. People suddenly became very interested in their drinks or their phones, but Yi Tangning could feel their attention prickling against her skin. Everyone was dying to know what was going on between her and the class monitor. Wu Yu knew better. Tangning would never fall for some class monitor. Not when she had a drop-dead gorgeous boyfriend who was so completely whipped for her. Jiao Yuan was decent enough, sure, but compared to the man Yi Tangning had at home, he didn't even come close. Wu Yu didn't say a word, just sat back and enjoyed the show. She shot Yi Tangning a teasing wink and mouthed, "Our campus beauty is still so popular." Yi Tangning just gave her a flat look. She noticed the curious glances flicking between her and Jiao Yuan, and his expression had turned disturbingly proprietary. She cleared her throat to set things straight, but he spoke first. "Don't get the wrong idea, everyone. Tangning has been busy lately and hasn't checked the group messages. As class monitor, I just passed the information along for her." His words were deliberately vague. On the surface, it was a clarification, but the intimacy in his voice was unmistakable. Yi Tangning frowned. Just then, a knock came at the door. A line of waiters wheeled in carts of food, and the spread instantly screamed full Western dinner. A poised female presenter began introducing each dish as the waiters served. Italian prosciutto salad, a classic appetizer with fresh vegetables, prosciutto, special dressing, parmesan, and black pepper. French escargot, one of the most iconic dishes in Western cuisine. Fresh snails prepared with generous amounts of butter, garlic, and herbs. Enjoy your meal. The waitresses bowed in unison and quietly pulled the door shut behind them. Everyone sat stunned. Imperial Hotel's service really was next-leveled. Yi Tangning was the first to recover. She pulled Wu Yu up with her and lifted her wine glass. "I've been swamped these past few days. If the class monitor hadn't reminded me, I would have missed this reunion entirely. It's been so long since we've all seen each other. And Wu Yu and I were late. I'm really sorry. Let me apologize with this toast." She downed the red wine in one smooth swallow. Wu Yu caught on immediately and drained her glass too. "Right, my apologies as well." Yi Tangning had chosen her words carefully. She made it crystal clear why she'd relied on Jiao Yuan for the group post, and pointed out that she'd only reconnected with him a few days ago, same as everyone else. The message landed. Jiao Yuan had been playing games, deliberately letting people jump to conclusions. Jiao Yuan's expression flickered, darkening for an instant. He stared at her delicate profile, at the lush curve of her lips, and something ugly twisted in his chest. He'd climbed so high and still she refused to look at him the way he wanted, but he recovered quickly, the practiced smile sliding back into place as he raised his own glass. "Tangning, Wu Yu, you're too formal. We're all old classmates. Let me propose a toast." The others chimed in, clinking glasses, and the room buzzed again. "Class monitor, which company are you with now?" one of the shorter female classmates asked, admiration clear in her voice. "Wang's Technology. Going on 3 years now," Jiao Yuan said, adjusting his glasses with a smug smile, but his eyes stayed fixed on Yi Tangning, watching for her reaction. "Wow, Wang's Technology, that's a huge company." The girl gasped. Yi Tangning's face remained completely calm, not a flicker of surprise. She glanced at Wu Yu, who looked equally confused. Neither of them had ever even heard of Wang's Technology. Class monitor, only 3 years and you can already treat us all to the Imperial Hotel. Your future is limitless. The guy next to him chimed in with perfect timing. Jiao Yuan twirled his wine glass, playing it cool. Not at all. I'm just a small fish right now. In reality, he'd borrowed his boss's VIP card. The card got him in, but the prices were astronomical. This private room, the cheapest they had, would drain 3 months' salary. And for what? Not even a smile from the beauty across the table. Bitterness pooled in his chest as Tangning turned away, completely indifferent. Just as everyone was busy flattering Jiao Yuan, Wang Xin's sharp voice sliced through. Class monitor Jiao is something else. Not like my useless husband, he can barely scrape by at the Fu Corporation. She reached under the table and pinched Yu Chong's hand, hissing, "Say something, will you? Forget Wang's technology. You work at the Fu Corporation. You're 100 times better than him." Yu Chong winced but gently took her hand. "You know my position. It's not that simple." Wang Xin snorted. If her husband wouldn't speak up, she would at the mention of Fu Corporation. Every head snapped toward them. Quiet little Yu Chong had actually gotten into Fu Corporation. Yu Chong, you sly dog, keeping something like that hidden. Getting into Fu Corporation means you're set for life. Wang Xin, you're so lucky. I actually submitted my resume there once. Got rejected in the first round. The topic lit up the room. Fu Corporation was legendary in Haicheng. Everyone from kids to grandparents knew its name. Hey, didn't the news say something about the CEO of Fu Corporation going missing? Is that true? A male classmate asked, remembering the headlines. Why Yu Chong's forehead immediately broke out in cold sweat. It wasn't that he didn't want to talk. He genuinely had no idea. In a whole year at Fu Corporation, he'd never once laid eyes on CEO Fu. The man had his own private elevator. People like Yu Chong never crossed his path. The CEO's disappearance was top secret, way above his clearance level. He spread his hands helplessly, and the others took the hint. So is the rumor about CEO Fu and that actress Tang Shui true? A female classmate pressed, dying to know. She was a huge Tang Shui fan. This one, Yu Chong actually knew a little. Don't spread this around, okay? Tang Shui supposedly came to our company once. Sunglasses, full disguise, but our eagle-eyed front desk recognized her anyway. Yu Chong leaned in, eyebrows waggling. Word is she waited in reception all afternoon and never even saw CEO Fu. Ended up having to slink away. A collective awe of understanding passed around the table. Some muttered about CEO Fu being a jerk. Others sighed about how deep the waters of the wealthy ran. If even a star like Tang Shui couldn't get a foot in the door. Why Tangning didn't join the gossip. Her phone buzzed with a flood of texts from the man at home. Wifey there, I'm done on my end. Where's your reunion? Want me to pick you up? Love you, I love you. Another day of missing my wife. She couldn't help the smile that tugged at her lips. She typed back, go home first, I'll be a while longer. T Imperial Hotel, but it's a bit far from you. Don't bother, I'll grab a cab with Wu Yu when we're done. Fu Hanbai didn't respond. Probably busy. She tucked her phone away. Fu Hanbai was sitting in the lobby of the Imperial Hotel, staring at his wife's message, lost in thought. He'd been here earlier to close a deal with the head of a foreign company. The man, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed entrepreneur who'd supposedly clawed his way up from nothing, had chosen this place. His heavily accented English had nearly driven Fu Hanbai insane. Thank God he'd brought his secretary. She'd provided real-time English-to-English interpretation, and somehow the three of them had stumbled through the negotiations. Afterwards, as they were parting, the secretary, wearing a sharp red suit, shot him a flirtatious look and leaned in. "I am in room 356 of the nearby hotel," she whispered, startled by the sudden proximity. Fu Hanbai jumped back a full step. He shook out his coat and discreetly sniffed for perfume. If even a trace of scent lingered, he'd be sleeping on the couch tonight. That woman was ruthless. The secretary curled her lip, didn't press, and left without a fuss. And now, his wife's reunion was in this same hotel. Perfect. He could pick her up and bring her home. But he couldn't just barge in. He'd wait in the lobby for a while, then text her like he'd just raced over. Fu Hanbai silently congratulated himself on his brilliant plan. The front desk clerk had been watching him for a while. It wasn't just his stunning face. She'd noticed him heading to the top floor private room, which required a diamond VIP card. Young, handsome, diamond VIP, and a face that melted women on sight. Of course, she noticed earlier, when he'd glanced her way, her heart had fluttered seeing him now on the lobby sofa, brooding, she thought. This was her chance. She approached with her sweetest smile. "Sir, would you like some tea?" Fu Hanbai didn't even look up. He waved her off with princely elegance. "No need." His deep, magnetic voice sent a shiver down her spine. She was about to step closer when a very distinctive voice came from his phone. "SpongeBob, why did my ice cream melt?" The clerk froze. Oh, her mistake. She backed away quickly. The private room at the Imperial Hotel buzzed as everyone crowded around Wang Xin and Yu Qiong, hungry for gossip about Fu Corporation. Why, Yu Qiong hadn't done much real work there, but he'd soaked up plenty of breakroom stories. He mixed truth and rumor together, and the group devoured every word. The noise level rose. People relaxed. Everyone marveled that Wang Xin and Yu Qiong had been together since senior year of high school. They'd even been caught by their homeroom teacher and publicly reamed out for it. And yet here they were, still disgustingly sweet. The whole table sighed at that. Talk drifted from Fu Corp gossip to everyone's love lives. 5 years after graduation, most people had some kind of history to share. That's when a guy who'd had a thing for Yi Tangning back in high school spotted his opening. "So who's the lucky bastard who snagged our school beauty?" The question grabbed every ounce of attention in the room. Why Yi Tangning kept such a low profile, barely posted on social media. Nobody had a clue about her relationship status. All eyes landed on her. She knew she couldn't dodge this tonight. Her plan was to brush past it with something vague. She kept a smile on her face and mentally rehearsed the answer. Then Wang Xin spotted her moment and jumped in. "Tangning has a boyfriend." Yi Tangning's expression went flat. Her classmates looked stunned. A boyfriend? That meant the class monitor's whole setup tonight was a colossal misfire. She hadn't done her homework. The class monitor's warm smile cracked, her fork stopped mid-air. Taking in their reactions, Wang Xin felt a smug little thrill. But her face stayed surprised. "Oh, I thought everybody knew." She looked down, picking at her nails, voice light and casual. "Last time I ran into Tangning selling stuff at the school gate, Her boyfriend was right there with her. He works at a milk tea shop near Yutsai Middle School. Their jobs are super close, so it's easy for them to look out for each other. The school beauty's boyfriend was some broke guy slinging boba. The mood in the room shifted. Nobody spoke. Someone in the group chat had mentioned Yi Tangning had been struggling lately, but the way she walked in tonight, dressed like that, blew them all away. She didn't look down on her luck still. Wang Xin had sounded so certain that it threw everyone off. What was the truth? They traded glances, none of them willing to ask Yi Tangning directly if Wang Xin was telling the truth. Asking would only twist the knife. Only Wu Yu seemed immune to the awkwardness. She was focused on her meal. Wu Yu knew she was the right person to speak now. She finished the last bite of Australian beef on her plate, plucked a napkin with 2 fingers, and blotted her mouth with elegant precision before speaking at an unhurried pace. Ningning's just too low-key. That's why she never posted about her relationship. I've met Ningning's boyfriend. Wang Xin shook her head with fake sympathy. In all my years, I've never seen a man that good-looking. Already knowing where Wu Yu was headed, Yi Tangning propped her head to the side and refused to watch. She knew Wu Yu was defending her, but imagining what was coming made her want to sink through the floor from second-hand embarrassment. Slapped Wu Yu smacked the table like a seasoned storyteller, swept her gaze around the room, and shook her head with theatrical flair. You know that guy who debuted as the center of that idol show recently? He's not even worth Ningning's boyfriend's pinky finger. She raised her pinky and aimed it deliberately at Wang Xin. Wang Xin burned with fury. Then her nose started feeling wrong. She glanced down. Her freshly done nose had shifted, the entire right side caving inward. She quickly covered the lower half of her face, pretending to look just as stunned as everyone else. Yi Tangning couldn't hold back a laugh. She exchanged a look with Wu Yu and gave her a subtle thumbs up beneath the table. Now the whole room was hooked. Was Yi Tangning's boyfriend really that gorgeous? Wu Yu poured fuel on the fire, raising her voice. Ningning's boyfriend isn't just handsome. He treats her like a queen, and whenever he stands somewhere, a talent scout runs up to shove a business card in his hand. But he never takes them. He says he'd rather stay by Ningning's side forever than wade into that cesspool they call the entertainment industry. Wu Yu was on a roll now. Yi Tangning felt her face heat up. She lifted her wine glass and pretended to sip at the AI. As ridiculous as it sounded, every word was true. Her classmates traded skeptical glances. If she really had a boyfriend that incredible, why hide him? Unless Wang Xin was right and he was way too embarrassing to reveal. A female classmate couldn't resist. Tangning, if your boyfriend's that hot, show us. Yeah, come on, another added. I want to see this legendary handsome man. We're all classmates here. Don't be stingy, just one picture. Yi Tangning could tell there was no way out without producing a photo of a Bai. She glanced at the class monitor, who'd been sitting there looking miserable. Might as well solve that problem too. No point letting things get ugly between old classmates. Hang on, let me find one. She pulled out her phone. She had plenty of Abai's photos. Her classmates pressed in around her. Only Wang Xin stayed in her seat, commenting dryly, "Photo editing software is pretty advanced these days. You can turn Voldemort into a supermodel if you try hard enough." She couldn't stand seeing Yi Tangning steal the spotlight. Even though she knew exactly how gorgeous Yi Tangning's boyfriend was, She had to spit on it anyway. Yu Chong frowned and tugged his wife's arm under the table. He thought she was going too far. These were old classmates. There wasn't real bad blood here. No need to make things ugly. Wang Xin shot him a glare. I'm joking. Everyone felt the awkwardness spike. It was obvious Wang Xin was gunning hard for Yi Tangning. That's when Yi Tangning's phone rang. She looked down. Husband was requesting a video call. Her eyes went wide. When Hanbai changed his contact name to husband? That sneaky little bastard must have done it when she wasn't paying attention. Her finger hovered between answer and decline. Why was he calling now? She was terrified he'd say something outrageous, something he absolutely shouldn't before she could decide. The call ended. She let out a breath of relief. Then she slowly turned her head. Her classmates were crammed together, necks craned, eyes glued to her screen. Stop shoving. There's no room up here. Yi Tangning sighed. So much for you can't Photoshop a video, right? She barely had time to feel relieved before her phone rang again. The screen read, "Husband is requesting a video call." With everyone watching, Yi Tangning's finger trembled as she tapped to accept the video call. The screen flickered, and Fu Hanbai's face filled it. Sharp, devastating features, a slash of dark brows, and that barely there curve at the corner of his mouth that turned his cold handsomeness into something lethal. He wore a black suit under a deep blue plaid wool coat that screamed quiet, staggering wealth. The classmates behind her inhaled in unison. Wu Yu had not been exaggerating. If they were talent scouts, they'd poach a face like that in a heartbeat. And this was just video. They couldn't imagine how much more intense he'd be in person. Zhou Yuan, the class monitor, kept his expression unreadable, but his eyes tracked Yi Tangning's every move. When Fu Hanbai appeared, Zhou Yuan's grip on his fork tightened until his knuckles blanched. Could a pretty face buy a meal? He despised men who coasted on their looks. The high-end coat on that guy's back was probably paid for with Yi Tangning's money. The instant Fu Hanbai saw Yi Tangning, his eyes ignited. Wifey, everyone stalled. Nobody expected a man with that glacial face to sound so damn clingy. You look gorgeous. He leaned closer to the lens, his features magnified, dark eyes swimming with affection. He hardly ever saw her in makeup. Tonight her delicate face glowed, polished and magnetic, and it did things to his chest he couldn't control. How's everything on your end? Yi Tangning fidgeted. If he got over the top sweet in front of her old classmates, she'd want the floor to swallow her whole. All done. I miss you so much. Fu Hanbai kept his gaze locked on his wife. Something about her tonight was different. It tugged at him until his heart ached. He couldn't reach her, couldn't touch her, and the ache boiled down to one raw sentence: I miss you so much. He was already planning to ask if he could sleep in the same bed. It had been too damn long. The classmates caught the sweetness and smirked at one another. Yi Tangning had that man wrapped around her finger. Yi Tangning curled her free hand into a mortified fist and shot him a frantic look that clearly said, "Are you blind? There's a crowd right behind me." Fu Hanbai finally registered the audience and straightened up. She turned the phone toward the group. "Bye. These are my high school classmates. Say hi." He wiped the smile off his face, lips pressing into a hard line. His eyes went cold and sharp, and his voice dropped flat. "Hello. A beat. I'm Aining's boyfriend." Yi Tangning waved at her friends. Show's over. You've seen enough. Go sit down. They wanted to stare longer, but they shuffled back to their seats. Ye Tangning signaled to Fu Hanbai that she'd switched to texting, safer that way. Sensing her tension, his brow tightened. He typed fast. What happened? Need me to come get you? She didn't want to drag him into the mess. Long story. Ran into a real piece of work, but she's just a clown. Woo you and I have it handled. Are you still out? Go home and rest. I'll be done soon. His jaw clenched, and his eyes darkened. 3 words appeared on her screen. Room number. He wasn't letting anyone mess with his wife. Ye Tangning knew that look. She didn't argue, just sent the info. Dehao Hotel, room 1022. Back at the table, the buzz was all about her boyfriend. Wow, Yi Tangning, you really kept him hidden. If I had a guy that hot, I'd shout it from rooftops. I thought I was hallucinating. Men that gorgeous actually exist. One classmate sighed dramatically. If I could date a man like that for one day, I'd die happy. Someone laughed. Then you'd better get Tangning's permission first. Across the table, Wang Xin sawed into her steak as if it were Yi Tangning's throat. The knife screeched against the plate. As she chewed, she glared at her husband. You chonged. If he were 10 centimeters taller, 10 kilos lighter, or even a few centimeters more wherever it counted, she wouldn't be so furious tonight. She finished the steak, pulled out her compact, and touched up her lipstick. Right, the bag. She'd almost forgotten the best part. Her gaze dropped to the handbag hanging from Yi Tangning's chair, and a cold smile spread across her face. Now she'd watch Yi Tangning talk herself out of this. Tangning, her voice dripped sugar. Which Hermès boutique in Haicheng did you get that bag from? Every head swiveled toward the two of them. The showdown was officially on. I'm dying for that color Birkin, Wang Xin went on, her stare sharp and predatory. Her nostrils flared with arrogance. But every salesgirl I've asked says it's unavailable. Yu Chong's eyes bulged. He whipped his head toward his wife. Since when could they afford Hermès? They couldn't touch a Birkin if they ate nothing but steamed buns and pickles for 6 months. Wang Xin kept her smile fixed on Yi Tangning while stomping her husband's foot under the table, a clear warning to shut up. The classmates were baffled. Just minutes ago they'd heard Yi Tangning was struggling. How could she afford Hermès? Tonight's drama kept twisting like a roller coaster. Yi Tangning was just as stunned. Wait, what? Hermès? The bag she tossed around for grocery runs was Hermès. No way. Her husband worked at a bubble tea shop and handed over his entire paycheck. The only thing he ever had in his pocket was a crumpled tissue. Where would he get the cash for something like that? Wang Xin caught the shock on Yi Tangning's face and pounced. The salesgirl told me this color is a limited edition. 400,000 yuan, plus at least 100,000 in pre-spend just for the chance to buy. She tilted her head. So which counter sold it to you? Do you have the salesgirl's contact? I really want one. Then she closed her eyes in smug satisfaction, waiting for the show. The room fell silent. Everyone's mind was reeling. That tiny, plain bag cost $500,000. Some of them wouldn't earn that in years. What was Yi Tangning doing that she could let a bag like that hang off a chair without a single word? Was it actual wealth or a fake? Yi Tangning's pulse hammered. Had that idiot bought a knockoff from a street stall? She couldn't show weakness, she kept her smile steady. My boyfriend bought it for me. Inside, she was already plotting what she'd say to Fu Hanbai when she got home. Wang Xin pressed harder. Could you ask your boyfriend which salesgirl? I love this bag so much. Yi Tangning's smile dropped, her face hardened as she stared directly at Wang Xin. Wang Xin stared right back, her lips curling into a sneer. Caught, aren't you? Everyone understood the subtext. Wang Xin was calling it a fake. The tension strangled the AI at Yu Chong tried to stand and smooth things over, but Wang Xin yanked him back down into his chair. Not a soul breathed. Then a knock struck the door. Jiao Yuan assumed it was the dessert service and rose to answer. But it wasn't dessert. It was Fu Hanbai. He towered over Jiao Yuan, his perfectly cut suit and coat molding to a powerful frame, presence rolling off him in waves. His mouth was a hard line, irritation carved into his jaw. Without a glance at the class monitor, he strode into the room. Everyone stared at the cold, arrogant figure in the doorway. Yi Tangning's boyfriend. His sharp gaze swept the space with crushing weight. Whoever met his eyes dropped their own and held their breath. He found her in an instant. He walked straight to her chair, took her hand, and held it tight. Aining. I'm here. The room went dead silent. People traded blank looks. None of them had noticed in the video, but up close, Yi Tangning's boyfriend was tall, easily 6'3" in that coat, and he walked with the kind of commanding presence you only see in movies, his suit-clad legs eating up the floor with every stride. Forget everything else. The class monitor next to him was dressed in a similar suit, but standing beside him, he looked like an extra. And then there was the ice-cold, superior aura rolling off Yi Tangning's boyfriend. One glance from him had sent a chill straight through them. He was the type of man who could make kids cry just by looking at them. No way he bought knockoffs. And he sure as hell wasn't some broke kid slinging boba at a bubble tea shop. If someone said he was the chairman of Fu Corporation, nobody would doubt it. Fu Hanbai acted like the room was empty. He crouched down beside Yi Tangning with zero self-consciousness and murmured something too low for anyone else to catch. Yi Tangning was just as stunned as her classmates. How did you get here? She asked, her voice tight. Fu Hanbai tightened his grip on her hand. I was worried about you. What? Did you teleport? Dihao's on the other side of town from Duashi. Fu Hanbai's jaw tensed. Right. He'd been so anxious about her that he'd bolted without thinking about how it would look. He ducked his head, guilt written all over his face. Then someone suggested getting him a chair. It wasn't right for a guest to keep crouching there, especially since he was Yi Tangning's boyfriend. The class monitor adjusted his glasses and shot Fu Hanbai a cold look. How did you get in? How had this guy just walked into Dihao Hotel like he owned the place? Had all the security guards gone blind? They'd let in someone without a VIP card. Fu Hanbai didn't even acknowledge him. His mind was totally occupied with figuring out how to explain himself to Yi Tangning. When Fu Hanbai didn't respond, the monitor's face flushed scarlet. He waved over the server at the door and barked, "Get your manager in here. I want to know what kind of operation Dihao is running. Letting people without cards just waltz right through the door." The server murmured a quick right away and rushed off. If what the customer said was true, this wasn't a small mistake, it was a massive security breach. The server didn't dare waste a second. As soon as the manager heard the report, a cold sweat soaked through his shirt. How could DeHao's front desk and security have made such a basic error? If the complaint was real, he might as well pack his bags and quit on the spot. The manager dropped everything, barked orders to his staff, and practically sprinted toward private room 1022. The monitor's voice had cut through the whole room. Every pair of eyes shifted to him and Yi Tongning's boyfriend. What was going on? According to the monitor, you couldn't set foot in DeHao without a card. Wu Yu was the first to slap the table. Seriously, Zhou Yuan, what the hell is your problem? The monitor let out a cold snort. Someone tried to smooth things over. Come on, we're all classmates here, no need to make it ugly. Fu Hanbai and the monitor spoke at the exact same time. Who's a classmate with him? The meddling classmate shut up fast. The room was about to freeze solid when the door swung open and a middle-aged man with a receding hairline rushed in, mopping sweat from his forehead. He scanned the room carefully, then said, I'm the customer service manager at DeHao Hotel. Which guest filed the complaint? The monitor's face lit up with smug satisfaction the moment he saw DeHao's staff. He shot a triumphant look at Fu Hanbai. Let's see how long this guy could keep up the act in front of Yi Tangning. The monitor jabbed a finger at Fu Hanbai. He doesn't even have a DeHao card, and he just marched right in. What kind of joke are you people running? The manager turned. The instant he got a clear view of Fu Hanbai, the sweat he just wiped away came right back. This was one of the diamond VIP guests from DeHao's top-floor private rooms. They triple-checked the profiles of every VIP on the top floor. Today, only 3 guests occupied those rooms. And this man was one of them. He hadn't given a full name, just the character Bai, so his file stood out in the manager's memory. He'd wondered what new elite had appeared in High City with that surname. Offend a guest like this, and he wouldn't just lose his department head job at DeHao. He'd lose his right to breathe in this city. And a man at that level wouldn't have to lift a finger. One slight nod, and a dozen people would line up to take care of the problem. But why was someone this important in one of the lowest tier private rooms? It didn't matter. The first step was to apologize. The balding manager completely ignored Zhou Yuan. He strode straight over to Fu Hanbai and bowed a full 90 degrees. Mr. Bai, I sincerely apologize. This was a failure on DeHao's part, and it's caused you a poor dining experience. Beside him, the server realized instantly she'd made a catastrophic mistake. She scrambled over and bowed to Fu Hanbai as well, bending even lower than the manager, her head nearly grazing the floor. The manager kept apologizing for a full 5 minutes, his words never repeating once. He left the entire room stunned, left the monitor Zhou Yuan stunned, and left Yi Tongning utterly bewildered. Wait, what? How was Bai a diamond VIP at DeHao Hotel? Wasn't he still working at Dwashi Bubble Tea, pulling in 8,000 a month? Feeling Yi Tongning's stare boring into his back, Fu Hanbai's body went even stiffer than the balding manager's. He didn't dare move. Not an inch. When the manager finally finished, he bowed 3 more times. Then, as if that still wasn't enough, he pulled a DeHao Hotel VIP card from his pocket. Mr. Bai, this is DeHao's Platinum VIP card, please accept it as today's apology. He held the card up higher than his own head. He'd have given an even higher tier card if he could, but his authority only went up to Platinum. For anyone else, A platinum card required at least 5 million yuan and pulling some very serious strings. Fu Hanbai grunted an acknowledgement and pocketed the card without ceremony. The food here wasn't bad. He could bring Yi Tangning back sometime. Having the card would make things simpler. The monitor's eyes nearly popped out of his skull. Who the hell was this guy? His own gold VIP card was borrowed from his boss. And this man just got handed a platinum card directly by the manager. A wave of dizziness and defeat washed over the monitor. He knew he'd lost. And lost badly. It wasn't until the manager and server had left and the door clicked gently shut that everyone else snapped back to reality. Yi Tangning's boyfriend was no ordinary man. If he could walk through Dehao Hotel like he owned the place, he was on a level they couldn't even imagine there was. No way the bag he'd given her was a fake $50,000 pocket change. The guy clearly didn't need the money. Wang Xin's mouth hung open in shock. The last time she'd seen Fu Hanbai, he was working behind the counter at a bubble tea shop. How had he transformed into this level of big shot in just 1 month? Was her memory crapping out on her? Wang Xin started to doubt herself. She pinched her husband Yu Chong's arm. He winced and sucked in a sharp breath so she wasn't dreaming. She didn't dare say another word. If she really pissed off Yi Tangning's boyfriend, she'd be lucky to leave with a full stomach today. Someone let out an awkward laugh. Let's grab a chair for him. We can all have a proper chat. Everyone chimed in agreement. A guy at this level of the food chain, they'd probably never meet another one in their lives. They had to seize the chance to schmooze. But Yi Tangning stood up. She looped her arm through Fu Hanbai's and turned a sweet smile on the room. Sorry, everyone, we've got some family matters to handle, so we'll have to take off early. Right, honey. She turned her face toward Fu Hanbai, her voice dripping syrup. But there wasn't a scrap of warmth in her eyes. Yi Tangning had never called him honey before. Fu Hanbai couldn't afford to feel flattered right now. He knew a storm was waiting for him at home. She was furious, not just a little angry. He was a fish in a net, a bird in a cage, a mouse dangling in a cat's jaws. No way out. Fu Hanbai forced a smile. Yeah, babe. Just go easy on me at home, he thought, and please, not the face. Under everyone's collective stare, Yi Tangning and Fu Hanbai walked out. The room was still buzzing about what had happened when Fu Hanbai came back. Everyone fell silent, staring at him in confusion. The man's brow was furrowed. His expression completely blank. He strode over to the seat Yi Tangning had occupied, grabbed the $50,000 Hermès bag she'd left behind, and hurried out again. Everyone marveled. That's how wealthy he was. He could casually forget a $50,000 handbag.